Hey guys, tonight we begin with the remarkable persistence of medieval mysteries. Stories once dismissed as legend, conspiracy, or drunken monk exaggeration, now unraveling under the cold, quiet gaze of modern science. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. And let's ease into tonight's journey together about the story of the fox and the bear. The Wonder Boy. Crows gathered in great flocks overhead as we searched the battlefield through the dead and dying. Some of the birds landed on bodies, and I slashed my sword at them, trying to send them back from where they came. I watched them scream up again into the sky before I turned to look for my brothers. All around me men were dying, their voices dying, already dead men, telling the crows they were ready to leave their bodies for the other world. And as I waited for Kai and Medraut to reach me, as I watched them stepping over these dying men, I shook and trembled. I was afraid, my heart wouldn't stop thrashing, and I thought I was crying. This was a terrible battle, our first as new warriors to the field, and I had never seen anything like it before. The horror of it, and I stood waiting in terror, for Arthur was missing. He was out there somewhere amongst the bodies, and so far we had not been able to find him. And so I stood where I was, shaking, frozen in fear. I could not go on if Arthur was dead, if he had been killed in this terrible clash of arms, where the dead smelled like blood and not men. I swallowed hard and began walking my way towards Medraut and Kai. When I reached them, me and Medraut fell on each other and held on tight. I sobbed at him. "Where is he? Please don't say he's dead. I'm begging the goddess of war. Medraut, please say he's not dead." "I know, Fox, I know we will find him." "Not dead," I cried at him. "No, not dead, not Arthur. He's too young, too clever. This was his battle, he won it. How can he be dead? He won it. Bedwyr, look at me, this is his doing." We fell on each other again, trying to still our torment. Kai joined us. He said, Arthur's doing, and he will have to pay for it." We looked around us, everywhere, bodies of the dead and the screaming of those still alive. Medraut said, "We should put some of these men out of their suffering. I will do it." And he walked off to put his spear through the chest of a Saxon under his feet. And as he did, he turned back to us and cried, "You know, I saw him earlier, somewhere over that way. He lost his horse too. Fox, come with me." Again, the three of us began searching for Arthur. We would not give up till we found him, and as we walked over the dead, with Medraut killing more wounded Saxons on the way, with the sky turning black above us and the bloody crows screeching, I thought I was dying. I walked like a dead man, for if this was battle, then it had broken my mind, my heart, my reason, and my love. Arthur, I began to lose my temper. It was naught but fear and horror inside me, and I wanted no part of it. For I trod on the severed arm of a man lying under me, and I almost spewed up my guts to see it. I cried out in horror, a wail to the crows, and Medraut held me up as the sky darkened even more. Black rain clouds above, it was turning to winter already, and I felt tears of fear fall down my face. I still held my sword, gripped so hard it chafed the palm of my hand. So many dead, I could smell them, the dead. And the carrion crows of the dark goddess Morgan, she sent clouds of ravens, wheeling and cawing over our heads, making my skin crawl, their wings black like the sky. I sank to the ground in despair. A day of destruction and despair was this battle. The sun was going down, and the bitter wind snapped at my cloak. If Arthur was dead, then this day would also be my last in this dark world. For I would impale myself on my own sword and follow him, I would. There was no doubt in me that I would, for I would not let him go alone across the divide, alone to Avalon. I would go with him. He would wait for me on the shore, and we would cross the water together. For we were brothers, bound together forever, my foster brother, my life. A sour taste from inside came up into my mouth and gagged me. I spat on the ground and came back to my feet. Medrout with me, and we carried on searching, and every step we made he cursed, "Piss on their filthy Saxon blood, Saxon bastards." And he kicked one of their dead, a dead Saxon, under our feet. I looked down at the man, and there he was, Arthur, lying next to the Saxon Medrout had just kicked. I dropped to my knees, dropped my sword and turned him towards me, saw his face covered in blood. I lowered to feel for his breath, touching his chest to see if he still lived. I felt a beat, a soft beat of his heart, steady but slow. "He's alive," I cried to the ravens that were waiting to pick at his flesh. "You cannot have this one, he's mine and he's alive." His helmet was split in half and lying on the ground. His head was split too, but it seemed his helmet had taken most of the blow. Medrout called out for help and men came running. One of them shoved me out of his way as he fell on his knees at Arthur's side. I watched helpless and in pain as the man tended him, one of our troop doctors now ordering him taken off the field at once. More men came. They lifted him, his body was limp, and they carried him towards the wains on the edge of the battleground. I jumped up and followed. Medrout and Kai came with me, both of them protesting in anguish when their troop captain found them and ordered them out to their horses. It was time to evacuate the field, but I had to stay with Arthur. The men carried him roughly, and this I did not like. I cried at them, "Be easy with him." But he did not wake even when they dumped him in the back of a wain. I climbed up inside with him, put a hand against his face and called, "Arthur, are you going to wake up now? Come on, don't do this to me, wake up." And I felt confused. Why was he not waking up? I looked out of the open carriage doors, saw Medrout and Kai with the rest of their unit running for their horses. Lord Darfod, our druid, and Ambrosius, chief physician, rode up to join me. He said, "Bedwyr, does he live?" It was so good to see him. Lord Darfod was the best doctor in Britain. I answered him, "Alive, but why isn't he waking?" The war horns were blowing the signal to move out, and all the warriors began wheeling off the field. "By the old gods, I do not know why he isn't waking," Darfod answered me as he pulled closer alongside our wain on his horse. He trotted behind, saying, "If it is a head wound, it will bleed heavily." But he should have woken by now. The Greek doctors are whispering about a coma, the long, unwaking sleep. If this happens, he may never recover his senses. "But that's impossible," I said to him. I was more afraid than ever. Arthur was too young for this. He was only 15. I was only 16, and I could not even speak well because my mouth was so dry with thirst. "How can a man sleep and never wake without dying, Lord Darfod? This is madness. Please make him wake." But despair took me, and I broke open and cried. Lord Darfod saw me crying, and I did not want to cry in front of our druid, but I gave myself away and cried like the boy I was. For Arthur, he was my life, my foster brother. I cried for him because he was everything in the world to me. Darfod said, "Boys your age should never be allowed to lead battles. This will cause problems for you, Bedwyr, with your father. And Lord Ambrosius should be ashamed for letting both you and Arthur take this field. You are too young to fight against Saxons like Hengist, and as a noble entrusted to his care by your clan, this will lose Ambrosius the support of your father." Nothing Lord Darfod said made sense to me. All that mattered was Arthur, and here the druid was, babbling at me about my father. I looked back at Arthur. He was half asleep, half awake. He was in a dream, sleeping with blood on his face. And no matter how much the wain bounced and rocked, he did not wake up. A groom rode over with his horse, bringing my own with him. All around I was crowded by warriors, smelled them like I had smelled the dead on the field. There was blood still on my boots. Lord Darfod rode off somewhere and left me. I felt sick. I began to shake. I could not believe we had survived this battle. If this was what battle was really like, it was naught but hellfire on land, and I sat and trembled, for the fear of it was still in me. But I had survived, and I knew I had fought well, despite my youth and inexperience. I had fought as well as any other man around me. For this I should feel proud, and I did, but I was still afraid, for one battle always led to another, and others we would fight, if only Arthur would wake up. I put a hand on his sweaty brow. He moaned when I touched him, and I knew he was struggling to come back to me. Another medicus came running. He climbed into the carriage with me and began binding Arthur's wound, a deep gash there on the left side of his head. We were now off the battlefield altogether and moving from east to west with all our surviving host and our wounded. We had battled in the country south of the great Arbuswater, where the Germani were again trying to take our lands, where the terrible Hengist had joined alliance with the Inglas, their forces cut to pieces by a 15-year-old boy. I laughed about it to myself, thinking, Arthur, what have you done now? It was not as if he had never done anything extraordinary before in his life. Once when he was 12 and I was 13, he rescued 7 of our men from Saxons who had taken them captives and put them to work as slaves, and even before that, he had been amazing his elders and angering his father. Arthur was starting to rouse himself now, and I made sure I kept close at his side as we made our way back home, victorious. I stayed with him all the way, looking into his face. Blood was dried and smeared down into his lips, and I tried to wipe it away, touching his face with my fingers wetted with my spit. I did it gently so as not to hurt him. I wanted to lift him up into my arms and cradle him to my heart, to wrap my arms around him and tell him that I needed him. What if he died? Could he still die? I cried. I had cried for him before in my life, for the way his father had abused him when we were boys, and I had cradled him through all of his pain, for if I lost him, my life would end with his. And the going did not get any better till we made a course south on the Roman road to Viraconium, and for most of the time Arthur slept, though he woke often, opening his dark eyes and looking at me as if I was a stranger to him. I sat next to him. I told him over and over, we're nearly home. Hold up, brother, we are nearly home. He looked at me, he said, so glad they didn't kill you, 3 long days. And by the time we finally got him back to barracks, the orderlies wasted no time in bundling him away into a warm room with a fire and women to fuss and feed him. This was good, and I began to feel better myself, as they fed me too. Often I would stop eating when I worried, and other times I fell into a black sorrow of despair for no reason I could find. But now, with Arthur beginning to recover his senses, or so I thought, everyone important in Viraconium came to see him. Ambrosius, the supreme commander of armies in Britain, came and looked down at him as he lay still in bed. Now, Arthur, how is your head? The commander asked him. It's still there, my lord, Arthur answered. Still sharp-mouthed, I see. This is a good sign. I have written to your father about this, and yours too, Prince Bedwyr. I hope your fathers will fathom the reasons for putting you both to battle on the front line. How else will you ever learn? The fox need not have gone, Arthur told him. Lord Pedrog will not like his son being used for front-line battle. I warned you of this, my lord. Then he should not have put Bedwyr into my army, boy. Be quiet now and get some rest. Lord Ambrosius put a hand on Arthur's shoulder, looked at me with a hard eye, and then went marching out of our room. But Arthur did not pay attention to the old man's words. He only looked at me and said, It's a good thing you were not killed in that battle. Your entire clan would rise against him if you had, not least having me kill him myself if you were killed. He's angry at you for taking that battle off him. You bested him in war, Arthur. You bested the Supreme Commander himself. You took control and you are only 15. Do you think he will stand for this? When you get better, he will knock you down to foot soldier. He trained me for this himself, right? You are too brilliant for him. You outshone him and your first battle. And I curse the rotten gods for making you brilliant and then splitting open your head. What were you doing? You don't fight Saxons in single combat. You were almost killed, you bloody fool. Do you think I can stand it if you die? If you die and leave me? He laughed a little. I did go wild. I thought I saw Hengist himself, but it wasn't him. I didn't kill that Saxon who brained me. Someone else did. I don't know who it was. I fell in a swoon. Well, it doesn't matter now. Just do what you are told and get some rest. I was still angry with him for almost getting himself killed. He was too brilliant to get himself killed. He needed a rein around his neck, or else have me at his side so I could always protect him on the battlefield. He would take me to war whether I wanted it or not, just so I could protect his disobedient hide. He would take me to war and force me to fight and watch men die. Oh, I could see all of this coming, sons put to battle in the wars of our fathers, and where Arthur went, so did I, and he would get himself killed and kill me along with him. I did not fathom why I loved him so much. I said to him, you deserve to shine, not die at age 15. I won't. Fox, stop looking at me like that. Bugger off looking at me like that, or I'll throw you out. I'm not going to die yet. I'll let you sleep, you prick. So he slept. Over the days that followed, he slept a lot more and his skin grew pale. Even though his skin is Silurian dark, he grew ashen pale, and I was sure he was going to die. It was not unusual for men to die long after taking their battle wounds. This was my fear, that death would claim him before he could fly. That wicked wound on his head, it began doing things to him none of us could have foreseen. He was not healing right, as the very next morning when we were alone together, when our woman healer had gone to make us some porridge, I saw his body shaking as he slept. Not all of him, only his right arm and right leg. He started convulsing on the bed before me, like a man felled in battle and dying. He began moaning. I did not know what to do, so I stayed with him till the convulsion stopped. And when it stopped, he slowly opened his eyes, unfocused, like a baby just squeezed out of his mother's body and born. I knew he couldn't see me, because even though he gazed right at me, he looked as if he did not know me. But he said, I was looking for you. He was all pale and groggy like a man drunk. His lips were so dry I lifted his head for a drink. He sipped it and said again, I was looking for you, Fox. I'm here. Where do you think I was? I gripped tight to his hand and started to shiver too because it was so bloody cold in this room. I told him, I'm going to light the fire, then get the doctors. Lie still, don't try to get up. I pulled out of his grip and began at once to build up the fire. My hands were shaking when I put the logs on the flames. I said, what do you mean looking for me? My head is pounding. I stood up and went to him, looked at him. He seemed half asleep again, and I leant down and shook him. He opened his eyes. He moaned again and said under his breath, let me go, and he went suddenly quiet and still. Arthur, I dropped down beside him, shook him again, but he would not respond. I would not lose him, not ever, so I got up and ran from the room. I could not find anyone in charge, so I ran to Khan, our drill master, and told him to send help, then ran back and was on my knees again at Arthur's side. Some of the wives of the camp had come in to help nurse him. One of them was already there when I got back. She was trying to rouse him, to feed him with her hot broths, but he was limp in her strong hands. She said, he is starved. Once he eats and drinks he will feel better. He is suffering, poor lad. She spooned beef broth between his lips and he tried to swallow. I told the woman, that blow to his head has knocked him brainless. I'm scared. As I spoke, a crowd of men came rushing into the room. Master Khan and Lord Darfod after them, 2 Greek doctors with their orderlies, also Ambrosius, personal favorite kinsman, Sinon Aurelius, sent everywhere as the commander's representative whenever Ambrosius did not want to make himself seen. I wondered if the old man was feeling guilty about Arthur's wound, for he had not come to see him since that first visit of his. All of these men wanted to throw me out so they could work, but the woman healer stopped them. "Can you not see the bond between these two boys?" she cried at them. "See how Arthur needs this boy? Leave him alone." I loved her for saying this, though it failed to make Arthur any better. The doctors doctored, but his illness went on for another fortnight, though he was well enough to sit up and drink and eat again. He ate everything the women put in front of him, because he was so savage for life that food went right in and never came out again, or so I believed, for this friend of mine did not shit but twice a week, if ever. So he was allowed only barley water to drink and blood sausage to eat, and he did eat, starved like a wolf. He held on to every nourishing morsel, growing like a light, forcing everyone around to love him. Men, women, boys and girls, and even the dogs loved him to madness. He did this to everyone who met him. Relief came when Master Khan said I could leave off duties till Arthur was up and running around again, because like the woman said, me being with him seemed to help make him get better. And he did that too, finally. He got so better he started telling me all about the battle he had won. He seemed to believe it had only just happened, as if I had not even been there myself. Told me all about it in rapid speech, barking like a dog, his mouth always working at a full charge gallop. "I won that battle, did I? It was me, wasn't it? This means big things. It means I can go all the way. It means all the captains. It means that wound on your head is no good," I warned him. "No good at all. It's going to keep making you sick, I know it." "Fox, shut up, will you? Don't you want to hear the rest of my story?" I laughed and he went quiet. So quiet I had to make him get out of bed and start walking. I needed to help him stand and walk, and I felt the heat of his body, felt his limbs trembling with the effort, yet he persisted and persisted till he dropped. He dropped onto the bed and his eyes closed and he stopped breathing. He started to shake in his right arm and right leg. Again I had to run for the doctors, but it was Lord Darford, our brilliant druid, who made the diagnosis of the falling sickness. "And there is nothing we can do about it," he told us. "This is the will of the old gods, something that will always happen for the rest of his life. He will slip away from us and go somewhere else, until he drops and falls and shakes. It is the falling sickness." Ridiculous Romany priest of Ambrosius said he has a demon in him, but it is not what that idiot man said, but from the wound he took to his head, and it will always be so. Darford put a hand over Arthur's and squeezed his fingers, said to him, "It does not hurt us, save only to stand here helpless and watch you suffer. How do you feel now, boy?" "I'm having visions," Arthur told him, "and colors, and I can fly, so why are you fretting over me? Have you all gone feckless?" Everyone laughed, except me. I was stunned by the changes in him. He was still himself, of course, but ever since he won that battle and took that blow to his head, something inside him had been unleashed, and I was afraid of where he would lead us next. Surely he would lead us all somewhere unknowable. And all we could do was follow, rejecting the sun. Another 7 months went by, and Arthur fully recovered, though he still had terrible bouts of falling sickness. And as the world was harsh and violent, our moments of happiness and joy were rare. Everything soon went dark again, for when Arthur was about to turn 16 years of age, his father, Lord Uther Pendragon, arrived in Viraconium for a war council with our commander. On a crisp, cool spring morning, he came with a band of followers. With him came Lot, his brother and Medraut's father, at his side. Lord Uther had sent letters to say he wanted a private meeting concerning his son in the presence of Lord Ambrosius Aurelianus, and my father, King Pedrog ap Bedredant, king of Dogfelling in Gwynedd. My father being high chieftain of the Stag clan, my kinsmen, we were all of us kinsmen allies to Uther Pendragon of Retold. And as my father was Arthur's foster father, he rightfully belonged at all meetings concerning him. Even I was to be there, called in as Prince Bedwyr of Dogfelling as I was, though always I preferred to be called Fox, the name Arthur had given me when we were boys. I was the fox and he was the bear. Yet as we dressed for our meeting, the bear was so uncomfortable about seeing his father again that I saw his hands shaking when he was doing up his belt. He said to me, "He's going to hurt me. I can sense it. I can always sense when Uther's going to hurt me. This is his final cut." And he made a cutting sign across his throat. "He's going to try and break me in front of everyone here, in front of you, my foster father and Lord Ambrosius, even Medrawd, all of you." "Why?" I said. "Because of the battle I won, why else? Uther will see this as a threat to his own power, that me, his only son, is a greater warrior than he is. Now he fears me, he will reject me outright so he can fight me legally. You watch, I bet you, Fox, he will reject me today." A hard look came into his eyes when he said this, but I knew him well enough to know his look was one of sheer pain. Uther did not love him. Uther was waiting for his chance to reject him, and I thought he was right. The time had come for Uther Pendragon to cast out his own son for fear of his growing power. Crows were cawing over in the trees when we left together to go and join the meeting in Ambrosius' campaign room in his private villa. And when we walked in, everyone was already gathered. Uther and Lot both seated behind a long table, facing Ambrosius and his attendants. Behind Uther stood his own warriors on guard, his Goddardin guard of the clan Lothian, powerful and hardened warriors from north over the Great Wall, from the land of the Votadini, our forefathers. With us was Medrawd ap Lot, and in the background as a witness stood Ambrosius, priest of Christ, Calrose Clement of Eburacum. Next to him stood Lord Darfod ap Luca, our own mediator between Uther and Ambrosius, opposing camps. And dominating the room was Uther's old red dragon banner, hung up on the wall behind him as a challenge to Ambrosius of the Cornovia, whose banner was Roman, the Roman Aquila. Still the Pendragon banner was taken with Uther wherever he went, so beautifully embroidered, hand-stitched by Arthur's mother, Igraine herself, and there in the middle of the room waited a single chair facing the table. I knew at once this single chair was meant for Arthur. No one needed to tell him to go and sit on it, which is what he did without comment. He sat staring not at his father, but at the banner, the red dragon there on the wall in front of him. The room was dark, just one small window above to his left. Arthur sat in a shaft of light, while all the rest of us waited in shadow. And even though he sat in a shaft of light, he looked darker than any of us, with his thick straight black hair and ebony black eyes, his skin a deep honey brown when he got out into the sun, and his hair had grown since his illness, and he wore a band around his forehead, holding back his fringe. Handsome even more so than his blonde-haired angel of a cousin, Medrawd, the son of Lot. For all of us, it was easy to see Uther had eyes only for his son. Arthur, sitting before him with his legs splayed open, arrogant, staring back at his father, while in the shadows and against the wall I stood next to Medrawd, as we boys were not allowed to sit. Medrawd nudged my arm and went to say something to me, but his father stopped him. "Do not speak, Medrawd, or I will throw you out." Medrawd fell silent, and Uther glared at us, then began it. "I see, Ambrosius, you have failed to keep this black dog son of mine under control. Did I tell you to let him go to battle and win them? Why did you let this happen?" Ambrosius replied at once, "I am the supreme commander of armies in Britain, my friend, and you were the one who put your son in my army. I knew you did not expect Arthur to become so brilliant at war." I suspect, Uther, that you were hoping he would be killed in my battles, and not your own. You are a devious ally to have. What I do with my enlisted men is my own to command, not yours." Uther smarted at this truth. No, he had not expected his son to be so brilliant at war. He said, "Well, that may be so, but I asked for this meeting so I can give you all a formal declaration, and have your lawyers note this down. I no longer recognize Arthur here as my son, born of my loins. He is Silurian born on Silurian soil of a Silurian mother of Silurian descent. His Silurian bloodline is noble, but even so he is no longer a member of my nation, but his mother's and her clan of the Bear. To her side he is legally bound. I reject him, and in exchange for my son I want my nephew Medrawd. He will come back with me today to Luguvalos." Medrawd jumped forward, crying, "No, I want to stay with Arthur, fight with him. And I cannot do this from the north. Please, uncle, let me stay here with Lord Ambrosius' army." Arthur growled back at him, "No, lad, Lot, and I want to train you to fight the Picts, not Saxons. Leave fighting the Germani to the southerners here. To Arthur, the Silurian and Aurelianus of the Cornovi, we Goddardin stay in defense of the north where we belong. So Medrawd, you will come back with us when we leave here, boy, and so should you, Bedwyr. Are you not also Goddardin?" I glanced at my father when the Pendragon spoke to me. My father stepped forward on my behalf and said, "My son will stay where I put him, Uther." My father then glanced at Ambrosius when he said this, and I sensed something between them, an unspoken conflict. Ambrosius nodded to Uther. "Prince Bedwyr will stay with his foster brother, and they will both continue to fight in my army. They are both enlisted men, sons who you yourselves gave to me for training, for war and leadership. But if you want to reject your son from your own clan, Uther, what is this to do with me? Nothing, other than I wish you to keep my son here under your full control. Keep him under control and do not give him a command. Let him be a soldier and nothing else." All the time as the men debated, Arthur sat restless in his chair, biting his jaw closed, dying to have his own say, but keeping still till the right moment. "So be it," Ambrosius said, and this was when Arthur finally broke. He jumped out of his chair and advanced on his father, who sat behind his table, saying to his face, "You don't know what you have just done by rejecting me. You don't know what you have done to yourself." He glanced at the red dragon on the wall. He said, "I want that banner, and I will take it from you one day soon. My mother made it and I want it. It should be mine." His hand clutched into a fist, and he burned his father with his black-eyed stare so that the great Uther Pendragon paled. "Medrawd, in exchange for you," Uther replied, "and you will never take Igraine's red dragon from me." Arthur seemed unable to breathe when his father said these words, but he answered, "I am Igraine's son. I am hers, you just said so yourself, and what she makes is rightfully mine, my inheritance as a Silurian. She made me. She made the red dragon, and one day it will be mine." Uther turned white with rage. He answered, "When I went to Igraine after she had given birth to you, all I saw was blood. You had split her open and blood was everywhere. You Silurian, you split her open. You came out the wrong way. You came out feet first, as if you dared to stand on your own 2 feet from the very moment you were first born. So bright, so clever, so different from the rest of us. You split her open and killed her. You will take nothing of hers because you killed her. The red dragon, father, it's mine." And Arthur turned away and walked out of the room, leaving us all standing, with Uther breathing hard like a bull in a charge. Ambrosius was forced to dismiss us before more trouble could come, and when we filed outside, we found Arthur gone down in another of his terrible falling sickness seizures, and Uther just had to come out of the villa right at that moment and see his son convulsing on the ground. He cried, He's got a demon in him all right. Punishment for being so arrogant and killing his mother, my lover. Take him, Ambrosius, and let us see what you can do with a monster like him. No more leading battles for him, or better still, put him out with your dogs. Even wolfhounds love him more than I do." Arthur turned then and walked away, taking his followers with him. I moved forward and lifted Arthur from the ground when his seizure stopped. Together we saw Medraut being dragged away, held between his father and uncle. Medraut called back, "Arthur, don't forget me, come for me, you hear me, come for me." So Medraut was suddenly gone, and we helped Arthur to walk. We tried to put him back to bed for the rest of the day, where he complained of a headache. Lord Darford gave him a drink with some potion in it to ease his pain, and he drank it down in one gulp and almost choked himself doing it. "Ambrosius said for you boys to take a full day off," Darford told us. Said why not go out riding later for some air and exercise, but he wants you back on duty tomorrow. But wait till this drink clears your head, Arthur, before you get on a horse. I do not want you dropping off if the sickness comes on you again." "It won't," he answered, and he looked at me with a veiled smile. Go riding? Riding was freedom to us. The two of us alone and away from barracks, just us, the fox and the bear, out into the wilds, where I saw the fire inside him burning. There was a fire inside him. I believed his heart was made of flames and his blood of molten steel. He rode his horse harder and faster than any other barrack boy, and grown men stood back when they spoke to him, because to touch him would set a fire to a man's skin. But on that day's ride together, Arthur kept his flames to himself. All day we stayed out, and when evening came, still we did not go straight home, but picked up our horses to a run, racing each other over the flats towards the Wrekin, chasing in circles, tighter and tighter, till our horses were almost up each other's arses. We laughed and laughed, going around and around till we were giddy. I stopped, breathing hard. Arthur looked at me. "What?" I said, but he kept on looking deep inside me. He said, "I think one day I will die in your arms, one day," and it turned unbearably cold. Mist began rising over the fields. He said, "Let's not go back tonight. Let's stay out all night out here." "We cannot," I warned him. "The old man will flog us, and we will get broken to foot soldiers again. We haven't got any blankets, we'll freeze. What if we go after Medraut like he said? My father will take him to Bedwyr before going home. We can sneak up there and steal the snake back again." "Don't act mad, Bedwyr is leagues away. You're feeling wild tonight because of what happened today. I know what you're like when you get like this, so dangerous." I moved my horse closer to him. I said, "What do you mean, die in my arms? You know we are going to die in battle one day, don't you?" He leant towards me and whispered, "I dreamt it. You are going to hold me while I die." He shocked me like a knife cutting deep, and I answered low, "No death can separate us, you know that." And we were so alone in the world, so cold in the air, cold over the ground, cold under the trees, and it was dark. I was shot through with fear. "There's no meaning in the world," I found myself saying. It came out of my heart. "No meaning if you die. It would be worse than this black sky over us now. I would feel as if I was that empty blackness. If I had life and you did not, I would hate it. Don't say these things to me." Somewhere in the forest, a dog-fox barked and a black shape of an owl flew over the treetops. Our horses hung their heads and we sat on in the night. We were afraid. A moment later he said, "You saw what my father did to me. It hurt so bloody deep inside me, my mind. Fox, I dreamt I died in your arms." "Listen to me," I whispered. "You took a bad wound on your head. Ever since then you have been having weird dreams, and now you have falling sickness. When you went down from that blow, you were probably only dreaming of dying. But I was there next to you. It was just a dream. Come with me, let's go home. We are in the shit heap now." I turned and took the reins of his horse, just so he would follow me and not linger in the nighttime cold. The gates were closed by the time we got back to barracks. The gatekeeper snorted and wouldn't open on purpose to spite us. But Arthur turned on him, "Open the gates now," and damn his manky bones, the man did as he was ordered. We rode in, and Khan, our drill master, broke us immediately, though he did allow us some supper. I was put on all-night guard duty, and sometime when I was about to fall over asleep, holding onto my spear as a prop, I felt Arthur come and take hold of me and lift me back on my feet. We were both rugged up with heavy cloaks, and he stood grinning at me in the dark. "Look at the stars," he said, cold breath on the air. "Sky full of stars." He was amazed. He said, "You know what Khan did to me? He's making me sleep with the new boys in the barrack dorm instead of my own cell. He knows how I hate that. Those little brats won't let me get any sleep, and tomorrow I have to polish every bloody horse harness in town before noon. Then I have to polish his boots, but I'm going to put shit in them instead." And he burst out laughing at the top of his voice in the middle of the night. "Be quiet, will you? I'm supposed to be on guard, and you'll get me broken worse than I am now. I cannot sleep. Oh, and no one else can either. Oh, those little runts keep jumping on my bed and asking me to tell them stories, so I told them about the haunted forest back home, when we used to see the water monster from the lake, walking through the trees at night. It scared the living lights out of them, poor little lads. I should not have done that. Now they won't sleep, and neither will I." He fell quiet, ashamed of himself for telling the new boys in our care naught but ghost stories. I said, "I'll give you a hand polishing tomorrow." He said, "No, you'll be asleep all day. Get some sleep. Go back. You can shove the boys off back to bed now. Get some sleep yourself." "No, every time I sleep I have dreams in fabulous colors, dreams of a far distant place. Fox, I think I'm dreaming of the future." "Sweet Jupiter's hairy balls, don't start that nonsense again. You know I do not like prophecy and superstitious lies. It's all dark and eerie out here. Look at those shadows, they could be full of Saxons." He went quiet, then said, "Saxons?" He hesitated a moment before saying, "See you tomorrow," and walked back to the barrack dorm. Arthur grows. A few days later, we were suddenly released from barracks, for a message had come from my father asking to have me and Arthur sent home at once. My mother was dying. Well, my mother had been dying for a long while now, so slowly it was a snail crawl to her grave. So my father's request to call us home for Mother's death day did not come as a great shock to me. Lord Ambrosius gave us unlimited leave. And once we were home again in my villa in the mountains of Dogfilling in Gwynedd, we spent all of our time in with my mother. All of her sisters were already home, with my uncle and his wife, and my two cousins, Lucan and Manos. The villa filled up and no one could move. Everyone came to see her die, my mother. It was harsh. We sat at her bedside, me and Arthur, and watched her dying. She never moved. She seemed deep asleep, breathing as if asleep. Her sisters washed her body even as she was still alive, preparing her for death. Watching this made me cry. Washing her body like they did, softly, gently, lovingly, it meant she was soon to pass over, and I cried. We all sat and sat. Everyone wept. I looked at Arthur and he looked at me. The tears on his face were like my own. I looked at my father. He was not crying. As king of the Stag clan, he would not cry. And when it grew very late in the night, my father told us boys to go to bed. Arthur got up and kissed my mother's cheek, then I kissed her. But Arthur was feeling her death deeper than I was. Her death was going to break him. Another mother he would see to the grave, for his own mother had gone to her grave so young, only 19 years when Igraine died. And this time, it was my mother, his foster mother, and by the time we came out of her sleeping room, Arthur was ashen white. We said good night to my father, who said that tomorrow, Medraut was coming over to be Uther and Lot's representative at my mother's funeral, for it was certain she would die this night. So when it was very late, when Arthur and I were alone in our outhouse room, I looked over at the big pallet bed where we used to sleep as little boys. Still there, and covered with deer skins and blankets of spun wool, so warm in the freezing mountain night. We would have to share it again. The first time since leaving home as 13-year-olds to go into Ambrosius' army. We were the lucky ones though, because our room had a large brazier and it was warm enough to sleep naked. Arthur slept. I did not. I lay awake, listening to him breathing, asleep at my side. I watched the low light from the fire over the walls and ceiling, the room quiet, though I heard the soft wind outside, the spit of burning wood. My mother ill and dying. Arthur slept naked, facing the fire, away from me, though he threw his right leg against my left. He was 16. I was 17. Sometime in the night he turned over to face me, and all I could feel was the heat of his naked body, flushed as a forge as he moved closer to me, and I gasped when I felt his body roll against mine. My heart thrashed in my throat. We were too old now to sleep together in such a way. We were not little boys anymore. I turned away from him, and darkness fell in the room as I heard his breathing stop. He stayed this way for a moment, till I thought he had died, but he gave out a sharp breath and started shaking on his right side. I turned back to him and put my hands on his shoulders and gently held him down till his shaking stopped. He disappeared into sleep, immovable sleep, and as I watched him rest, I felt again an old trouble inside me rise up to choke me. I felt a hard lock form in my throat and a heaviness in my chest. I looked at his face and thought about his life, more pain in his life than whatever I had known, even with the misery of the coming death of my mother. And as I watched him sleeping, I thought of him being rejected by his father, the punches he had taken from Arthur's fists when he was only 8 years old, and this falling sickness that gave him visions only he could see and sounds only he could hear. He slept on at my side and I watched him, feeling strange things as I stroked the hair out of his eyes. And as I looked at him, I knew I needed him more than my own life, and yet he tortured me, confused me, drove a great wedge into my mind and a sweet spike into my heart. I stroked his hair, I looked down at his face. He was so fast asleep nothing could wake him, not even the owl that suddenly went screeching outside our tiny window, an omen of coming death, and I was afraid. I pulled back from him and tried to sleep, and when morning came, it was a horrible morning, lashing with rain, and the cold went into my mother's heart later in the day and killed her. We all gathered together by her deathbed, and when she passed, I saw a look of peace touch her face. A smile touched her lips as I fell at her side and took her cold hand and wept. I cried and cried on my knees, listening to the keening of her sisters, a banshee wail. I cried and Arthur stood at my side. His hand came down on my shoulder, but he did not move and he did not speak. Not even when Bedwyr arrived did he speak, but went out and sat before the fire in the main room while the rest of us cried on at mother's bedside, mourning. The rain came down all day, a day that was a lifetime to me. Finally, when I came out of my mother's death room, I found Arthur sitting still and staring at nothing, with Bedwyr standing at his side, watching him. But Arthur said nothing. He stayed silent for another 3 days, till we took him outside to my mother's funeral. It was still raining, the hillsides ran with water, the rivers full, the streams gushing, the lake misty. The ground under our feet had churned to mud, and when she went down into her grave, only then did Arthur break, rain in his face as he went down on his knees at her graveside. We stood watching him, watching as he pushed his hands into the soil of her grave, but still he did not cry. My father picked him up, and we all walked home, bolted inside to change out of our wet clothes, to find something to eat and wait for the sun to come back. And this was just what happened. The next day was like heaven on earth. The sun blazing out of a clear rain-washed sky, the air so clear and fresh my sorrow lifted, and I knew somehow that my mother would be happy to lie under the soft soil of Britain on such a glorious morning. I felt sad about it, but happy, and going outside, I found Arthur and Medraut sitting together on the log seat, eating porridge. The horrible sadness seemed gone from Arthur this morn. I found him and Medraut smiling about some private jest. The snake was telling him about the goings-on in Arthur's camp, and when I sat down to join them, they told me they were going hunting. I swore at them, "You bastards, I have to go with my father today to visit some old mad relative of his." "Why can you not wait till another day? I want to go with you," Medraut said. "It has to be today. I have to go back to Luguvelos tomorrow." "Sorry, Fox," he shrugged, and a smile came on his lips as Arthur looked at me with a cocksure grin. I thought, bugger you two with sharp sticks. They took up their pig spears, got up and left me sitting alone. They went away up into the hills over my villa. I did not see them again till the following afternoon. Over the time they were away, I worried. I worried and fell into the black sorrow that came on me whenever I worried. My mother had just died, my father was black and bitter, my clan was brooding. They were soon to go to battle again against the Gales, and I was grieving, and Arthur and Medraut were so bloody good together they shook the ground they walked on. I knew this. I hurt inside, a kind of jealous pain, and I never once took a bite of food while they were gone. Together they were the light and the dark, bound together forever, though it was the blonde and beautiful green-eyed snake who was the dark one. And my sorrow, a terrible aching black sorrow, came again when I thought about the brilliance of Arthur and Medraut together, how they worked the army to perfection, while I hated every stinking moment of army life. Hated it from the very first day I had been sent through the gates of the military city of Viraconium, south of Deva, at age 13. Why had my father put me to Ambrosius' army in the first place? I was old enough now, I thought, to be suspicious of the actions of battle chieftains, and my father was king of the Stag clan of Gwynedd, allied to Lord Uther Pendragon, allied to Lord Ambrosius Aurelianus, and my father had put me in his stinking army, contracted and enlisted legally. For wherever Arthur went, I went as well, and I was beginning to rebel. Ambrosius had put me on the front line. That man surely did not care for the lives of the sons of nobles, and Arthur and Medraut had left me to rot in this feeling as I grieved for the loss of my mother. And just as I was about to go and look for them late the following afternoon, I saw them chasing down from the hills, out of the trees, shouting and yelling, brandishing their pig spears at me. They came running up to meet me, wild as painted Picts. My father came out of our house at that moment, and stood with me, ready to pounce on them, as I could see he was now as mad as all bloody hellfire for them staying out all night without permission. They came running home, all sweet and full of themselves. These two cousins, who were under my father's care, had not come home the night before, so again Arthur was in trouble, and I did not care, because I had stayed awake all night fretting about him, starving myself for him. Bastard. We stood waiting as they came running up to us, filthy with sprayed pig blood, and I could tell straight away from Arthur's look that something had gone on between him and Medraut overnight. It was all there in his smile, the enigmatic smile he always used. And the first thing that happened was my father stepped forward and clouted Arthur hard across the side of his head, the side where he had taken his battle wound. Arthur staggered back from the blow and almost fell. I jumped to help him, but he righted himself and brought up his spear and dived its point at my father's chest. He stopped within inches and warned in a savage voice, "Do not ever hit me again, Pedrog. That is the last time I will ever let any man hit me. I am not for hitting any longer, and whether you acknowledge it or not, my lord, I am still the son of Lord Uther Pendragon, your ally. He rejected you, boy." They both stood in silence, eyeing each other. The moment was black. All around us the world had stopped. Arthur standing before my father, immovable. My father relented first. He moved aside, saying, "Arthur, you know well enough you were supposed to have come home last night, but you disobeyed me. Medrawd, there is a horseman waiting to escort you back to Luguvalos." He then turned away back into the house. After the door slammed shut, Arthur cursed, "Jupiter's balls, that hurt." Medrawd put a hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right, cousin? What a bastard for hitting you like that. I can tell your father if you want when I get back. Arthur will not like." "Leave it," Arthur told him. "Come on," I said to Arthur. "Let's go back inside. You have a lot of explaining to do to my father. You shouldn't have done this to him. What if something had happened to you? You want to put our clan into conflict with Arthur?" Arthur steeled himself and glared at me. He came following me inside, Medrawd with him. When we got back into the house, my father was sitting in front of the hearth, frowning. He looked at Arthur and Arthur looked at him. My father said, "Arthur, you are no man's to control any longer, and I can no longer foster you. I have just lost my wife and Bedwyr his mother, and you run off into the wild and stay out all night with your cousin here. So it is good that while you were gone yesterday, a messenger came with a letter for you from Ambrosius." He stood up and took a black leather wallet out of a bag, which hung over the back of his chair. He handed the wallet to Arthur. Straight away, Arthur took the letter out and pulled open the eagle seal. I looked over his shoulder. The letter was written in formal Latin, and I could not read formal Latin. The feeling in the room went from cold to hot in an instant when Arthur explained, "I've been ordered home to barracks. Immediate return." "Good," my father said. "The army is where you belong." Then Arthur looked at me, and I knew this was no ordinary mandatum. He opened his mouth, was just about to give me an order, but stopped. I was to him his friend, his brother-in-arms, foster brother, his equal, and he always treated me as such. Arthur would never order me, but the letter had fired him so much he turned to stand before my father and say, "Bedwyr and I have been ordered to return to Viraconium today, both of us, not just me." And this was when it all started. My troubles, the very moment when my black sorrow filled me and drowned me, the moment when everything inside me changed, and even though I had been feeling black for days, this terrible crushing feeling I did not expect. It caught me off guard, unshielded, as it was so strong and evil. There was a moment of silence and Arthur went on, "I am to lead a unit of my own. Ambrosius has given me my own unit to command, and against my father's wishes." I could see the fire burning in his dark eyes, the look on his face, his first command. The way Medrawd came and stood beside him, looking at him awed. The snake said, "Wait till Arthur hears about this. He forbade you a command, now look what's happened. The old man has ignored your father's order." Arthur looked at Medrawd, then back at my father, told him, "We have to leave now." My father went and stood between myself and Arthur. He said, "Ambrosius is using you, boy, to lead his skirmishes. Do you understand? I did not send my son into the military so he could be used as a common skirmisher, and Ambrosius knows this. And yet still he uses my son for frontline fodder. My son is a prince of Gwynedd, a Goddardin prince, and he will stay here with his kinsmen." My father sounded hard. He stood in front of Arthur and stared him down, as if his foster son had suddenly become our enemy. And here my father cared so much for me that he would refuse Lord Ambrosius himself, the supreme commander of armies in Britain, the use of his son in battle. I was my father's son, a son of Gwynedd and Dogfailing's prince. Yet still Arthur looked at my father resolute till he relented. He said, "I understand, sir," and he turned and began gathering his things to leave. He and Medrawd both began packing their saddlebags as I stood and watched them, feeling torn. As even though I was Goddardin born, I was still enlisted in Britain's military. Maybe my father's greatest mistake was to send me into another man's army, and if I did not go back to barracks now, what would happen to me then? Ambrosius would see this as a formal rejection of his alliance with the men of Gwynedd. He would retaliate with accusations of my desertion, and my father would then have to pay a high compensation price to keep me from being labeled as such, a deserter. And my good name and his would be disgraced and dishonored in Britain. I would dishonor my entire clan, not just myself and my father. For not only would I be a deserter, I would be an oath breaker, for I had sworn the words of the sacramentum to Ambrosius himself, so to stay behind while Arthur risked his life defending Britain and upholding his own oaths, I would be shamed throughout Britain if I did not return with him now. Deep inside, I did not want to go. I hated the army with every bone in my body. A black meanness came over me because of it, because of my father's mistake of giving me to the military and not to my own clan. I watched my father's face. I watched Arthur. They said nothing to each other. It was a deep rent between them, and I stood in the middle. I wanted to stay with my father and be his son and heir, to ride with my Goddardin cousins and fight the Gaels. Lucan and Manos, sons of my father's brother, Tannen, were their leaders, and I wanted to fight with my own clan. I hated the army, and Arthur had stayed out all night with the snake. For a fleeting moment, I hated Arthur too. He wanted to take me back to the army with him and make me suffer. Yet he did not protest or order me to follow him. He knew what the future would hold for us, and he no more wanted me to be there on the front line than did my father, which was why Arthur said nothing more and made no protest. But right at that moment, I could not see a way out. All I saw was my only friend who was more powerful than any other 16-year-old in the land, and it struck me hard. I wanted to stay at home. When Medraut was ready to leave, he said farewell first to my father, then to me, and went out. Arthur followed him. I stood and watched them through the window. I saw them step out into the street and walk downhill, heading towards the main village square where the snake's escort waited to take him home to Luguvelos. Also there was a unit of mounted riders, sent up by Ambrosius to accompany Arthur on his homeward ride. A few paces down the hill, I saw them stop, saw them hug each other. They clasped hands in the way of warriors, saying farewell. Medraut then pulled away and walked on down the hill. Arthur turned and came back into our house and gathered up his gear. I said to my father, "You know I have to go. I'm contracted to Lord Ambrosius. Father, you gave me to him yourself." He nodded to me. "I am sorry for this now, and I cannot keep you if you decide to go back. You are a man now. This is your choice, Bedwyr. If you want to stay, it will cause a lot of trouble, but if you want to go back, I will not stop you. Decide now. Will you go or stay?" "I have to go," I answered him. "I swore the sacramentum to Ambrosius himself, and he is my supreme commander, and to break my oaths would shame me. I will go back." "Then let me look at you, a strong lad, my son." Arthur stood and watched as my father took me into his arms and hugged me long and hard, kissed my forehead. He hugged me farewell, but he turned his back on Arthur. He went through to his private room and slammed the door on us both. I almost cried. Now 2 fathers had rejected Arthur in one. My father turned his back on his foster son. I could feel Arthur's pain. I felt it for him. We looked at each other. He did not say anything to me, and we left the house and walked on down to join the troop for the long ride back to Viraconium. Trouble begins. We were well on our way on the southern road, and I did naught but get into a deeper and deeper fit of intense dislike for the men around me, for the army, for the way I had been pulled out of the loving arms of my father and my clan. I felt out of place, pulled from my homeland and my kinsmen to fight far from home. I watched these warriors of Ambrosius as they rode, armed fully in case of attack. Swords and shields, riders older than ourselves, with Arthur there in the center because Ambrosius had ordered them to protect him. I grew suspicious, for what was it Ambrosius wanted so much from this young Silurian? What in all bloody hellfire did Arthur have that the rest of us did not? There were 35 riders around him. 35, just for him, when 10 would have been enough on this road, which was safe and well within our own territories. Arthur seemed unmindful to it all. Next to him rode Sinon Aurelius, 10 years our senior, and a favorite with Ambrosius. Sinon being a distant relation to Ambrosius, all but gone family, a last distant cousin, a remnant member that kept him clinging to the commander's favor, more like a head lice than a supporter of worth, I thought. And Sinon was a prefect, an experienced warrior, and the commander's representative. Yet there was always something about him that seemed rotten to me. He was dark-hearted and loved to talk shit. He was talking shit to Arthur now as they rode in front of me, and I wondered why, as Sinon had always hated Arthur to the point of wild madness. After a moment, when Sinon at last stopped talking, Arthur turned in his saddle and looked back at me. He dropped back then to ride next to me. I could not bear him, and as he joined me, I spurred my horse away from him, trotting forward down the line where I joined a group from our own barrack. I rode with them and did not talk or look at Arthur again for the entire ride home. I could not fathom why I did that, why I rode away from him like I did. But I did not like him anymore, and because of it, I hated myself just as much, if not more. Yet I could do nothing about it. I felt all twisted inside. I stayed twisted even when we got back to barracks. Our horses stabled, we were fed and watered like the animals, then sent back to where we belonged, slaves to the army, fodder for the front line. Arthur and I shared the cell at the end of the dorm, next to the drill master's own room, where he could keep an eye on us. There was nothing in our cell save 2 pallet beds and piss buckets. This was it, and I threw my pack down on my cot, then sat there, watching Arthur do the same. He sat on the edge of his own cot and we looked at each other. He said, "What are you doing to me, Fox? I didn't force you to come back. You know I would never give you an order, and you could have stayed at home, and I would have fought on your behalf before Ambrosius to protect you. I came because I'm contracted to the army, and if I had stayed they would only have come and got me, so what's the point of me staying home? I cannot get out of this mess. I feel like I don't have a choice, and it's all happening because of you. I'm stuck with you." I jumped to my feet and advanced on him, stared at him as he sat there on the edge of his cot. I pointed in his face. You lure me into a trap, and once caught I cannot escape. Can't you just leave me alone? You keep on luring and pulling till you become a force I'm not prepared for. Why do this to me? Stop doing it." He looked confused. "What are you talking about? I can't fathom what you're saying. I'm not doing things to you. What are you talking about?" "Oh dear goddess," I heard naught but pain in his voice. No, he did not know what he did to me, and I did not know that I had just ripped out his heart. These things I learned much later, but then we were saved from something far worse by Khan, our drill master. He came charging into our room and told Arthur that he was wanted, that Lord Ambrosius himself wanted to see him. Arthur got up and left with Khan, and I sighed in relief when he went out. All the next day I worked hard, mucking out horses like a stable boy, doing jobs the older warriors would never touch. After this there was drill, practice in holding lines against attack, sword work, spear work, learning the hand signals used by the cavalry, cleaning and polishing, then catching up on bloody Latin classes. I hated this, for I was beaten in Latin classes because I wrote left-handed. The Romany Christian cleric who taught us constantly beat me for it. He hit me with a stick like I was a dog and called me names. Left-handed men, he said, were the devil's men, sinister, and he cracked my head and my hand, and I put down my stylus and refused to learn. I walked out of class. I always walked out of Latin classes, and everyone in barracks knew me as a left-handed troublemaker, the devil's own man. For their curses on me, I vowed never to go back to Latin, even though I would be punished for it. I went back to my cell in the late afternoon. Then Arthur came in, riding into the practice square with Gareth Apgan, our trainee scout. He and Arthur were great friends, and Arthur himself, riding in all-powerful, raw and dark and laughing. I stood in the open doorway of our barrack, brooding, sore of hand and sore of head, and watched him jump down from his horse and come over to join me. He was still smiling, a smile that could cut through ice and melt snow on the frosted hillsides in winter. I lost the darkness in my heart from Latin class, also from the night before our fight. His smile burned me. I could not help myself. I laughed and gripped his arm when he stood by me. There was something brewing inside him. He said, "I do not believe it." He shook his dark head, adding, "I have my own unit, though of course still under Ambrosius' command. I'm leaving tomorrow on a 4-week tour of Saxon territory, and he gave me a new war horse for me, mine all for myself. It's like a dream." "A new horse?" I cried. "Brilliant. I have to see him. Don't you dare leave without me seeing him. Have you seen him yet?" He's chestnut brown, a hot blood but well-trained and fast. I rode him down the training ground this morning, but he's back in his own stable now over near Ambrosius' quarters. I'm going to name him Calibus. A new horse. It was every boy's dream to own their own warhorse. I laughed and whistled. The lads outside in the square went riding around and around, hitting each other, trying to unhorse each other. The day was glorious with summer, white clouds drifting on a soft, sweet breeze, hot in the square when the others began calling us to join them, and it had hardly entered my bonehead about what Arthur had just said. I heard the part about the warhorse, but not the part about a 4-week tour of duty. So together, we went out to join the group, and I jumped up behind Arthur on the horse he was riding now. Not his new one, and we all galloped down to the training ground. Down on the field, the trainers had set up their javelin throws. We jumped from our horses and ran for the javelins and began a competition in the late afternoon. The air was full of scents and buzzing insects, the sky full of larks and buzzards soaring above us. One after the other, we launched our hawk-feathered javelins, and none of them could beat me. If there was one thing I was good at, it was javelin throwing. The javelin had always been my best weapon, and I could use it like no other. Not only was I the best thrower, but the most accurate. I could hit the target middle on, while all the others skimmed theirs past on either side. I laughed at them. They tried, but I thrashed them all. There was a trainer watching too, so I threw even further to impress him, and I got cheers from the men. And after I won 5 games out of 5, everyone gave up and wrestled me to the ground. We all wrestled around for a while, then fell into the grass spent. We watched the sky, listened to each other breathing, felt the coming twilight, and we were hungry. Still we lay in the grass, and when the others got up and wandered off to gather their horses, it finally struck me what Arthur had said earlier. A 4-week mission to Saxon territory. This was deadly. At any moment he could be attacked, and the troop would return and tell me what I feared the most, that Arthur had been killed. I knew it was there inside me, but I found it hard to admit. The army would kill him. He was here beside me in the grass, and what he did next was reach over and grip my wrist. He whispered, he actually said to me that there's no other alive in Britain who he's more willing to have as an heir to the supreme command than me, because of the battle I won for him against Hengist. But I'm scared, Fox. I have to leave. I don't want to leave. Sometimes I think I'm out there somewhere in the world, and without you, it doesn't matter if I live or die. I had no words to answer him, yet I saw everything Arthur was, brilliant, beautiful, dark, and enthralling like no one else in the world. The way he spoke, his voice, the way he walked. I rolled over to look at him, found myself saying, I don't know what it is that you do to me, but it's deep and it's like love. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to live with you, Silurian. I put a hand on his chest. I could feel his heart thrashing in his chest. I told him, I cannot live with you anymore. You bore holes into me. I cannot bear you a moment longer, and I got up and walked away from him, trudging alone back to barracks. I never saw him again that summer. It broke my heart, and as the weeks went by, hotter and hotter, I tried to stop feeling the pain, tried so bloody hard to stop thinking about him, but everything got worse and worse. We were trained harder, and I started to drop behind the others in my work and training. I did not care. I had never fitted in with the barrack boys or the army in general, though I knew myself a brave and willing warrior. I wanted only to go home to fight for my own men of Gwynedd, as I should. I was a prince of theirs, and I wanted to escape and go home. I grieved and grieved as everything began getting heavier and heavier inside me, blacker and blacker. But one night Master Khan came to sit beside me as I daubed my boots and said, "Wonderboy is down near the Saxon shore where the new settlements are. It is very dangerous territory to be in. I know Arthur is clever, but the old man pushes him too hard sometimes. He is still just a lad, still growing and finding his way. From what I know of Arthur, he is too wild to be a leader. He talks brilliant things, but can he put them into action, I ask myself." I stopped polishing and replied, "Master Khan, where were you when Arthur won that battle at River Glen? Were you dead, you old fool? Arthur can do anything. You shout too much and don't see what's under your very nose. I'm not sure it's a good idea telling me what's going on. I would rather not know." He snarled at me. "What I have seen, Prince Bedwyr, is you are insolent, arrogant, selfish, and inattentive in your training. You are rebellious, insubordinate, and unteachable. You are intelligent, but still falling behind with everything. You do not care. I'm surprised you are even bothering to daub your boots. I will discipline you if this keeps up. A week on full extra duties and no princely privileges. Back out on the dawn for you, dawn rising as you should. Now go to bed before I have you flogged for insubordination." I threw my boots down as he left and cursed behind his back. I was everything that was wrong. Arthur was everything that was right, and I was glad he was gone, for if he could see the way I was now, failing, breaking, sliding into darkness and rebellion, destroying myself, it would have killed him. And there was no way in the world would I let Master Khan batter me with extra duties or anything else. I had come to the end. I had had enough. More than enough. Later that same night, I deserted the army. I did the very thing that would shame my name forever. I deserted, and I could not stop it from happening. Everything inside me went black, and so, during the night when Khan was sound asleep and snoring from too much ale, I took a messenger bag from under his bed. He heard nothing, did not wake. I went down to the stables and took the horse I usually rode, and walked him down to the main gates. Here I told the gatekeeper that Master Khan was sending me on a special errand. I showed the keeper the messenger bag as proof. He shrugged his shoulders and opened the gates, and I rode out, galloping off into the darkness. I had no idea where I was going, no idea what in all bloody hellfire I was doing, terrified to stay and terrified to go. I just ran with the horse till I reached the nearest forest and fell off, collapsed into the undergrowth and moaned aloud, because there was no one to hear me. I felt broken in a black moment of misery and wayward confusion from which I did not recover for month after month. After month, I did not go home. I was too ashamed to go home, so I became a fugitive, a deserter, low like a bandit on the side of the road who lay in wait for innocents to murder and steal from. Though I swear by the old gods, I did not kill innocents and I tried not to steal, but I did, yet only to stay alive. After a few weeks more of wandering, I had to sell the horse in exchange for food. From then on, I trudged from village to town and back again. My boots wore to shreds, and then I went barefoot. I sometimes managed to get work on outlying farmeries and in villages, again doing those jobs no one else would tolerate if they could avoid it. I looked after pigs and became a swine herder. As I slept in barns, I had no way of knowing what was happening in the military world outside. I tried not to think of him, who Khan called Wonder Boy. I was so bound within my own misery and how to survive for another day to allow myself to think of him. I forced him out of my heart, removed him from my soul and all my daily attempts to survive. I had decided somewhere in the deep black parts of my thoughts that I would sever myself from him totally, completely and forever. I would never again have Arthur as my friend, and I would refuse him if he and I should ever come together again. I believed I hated him. Being lost. In early autumn, I walked broken and stumbling from hunger and growing cold into Caerbaden, Sulis as we Roman-trained soldiers called it. And as I came near the city square there, right there in front of me sat a group of mounted warriors, and when I looked up, there he was on his chestnut stallion, fully battle-armored and wearing a Silurian cloak in the colors of his nation, deep golden yellow with blue and black plaid. He looked powerful and strong. I gasped and dropped back out of sight, though I peered around the corner, my heart hammering. After 3 months of running and starving, I could barely control my emotions. Seeing Arthur again, so strong, so powerful, and myself so low and miserable, it broke my heart. I could not control what happened next. I sank to my knees and cried in a dirty back lane, for he looked beyond power like a prince should be. And myself, a true highborn prince by status, knew that before my madness I was good-looking. And after so much anguish, I was filthy, dirty, unwashed, a miserable scraggly growth on my chin, my hair matted, broken fingernails and my bare feet cut and filthy as my body. I stank. There was no way in the world I would allow him to see me like this, so I cowered back into the shadows and listened to the warriors calling to each other, knowing that I should be there with them. Then the sound of their horses moving out in an ordered trot. I stayed where I was, unable to move and dying in the street. Here I believed I had gone so far into the mire that nothing could save me. I knew I was lost, and I cared for nothing. I only cried about it, and wiped the tears through the dirt on my face, and shivered on the ground. Townspeople walked by me, staring at me some, while others ignored me. A man kicked me, and said to get up and go find some work. That kick, it did something to me, more than just the pain and the humiliation. I finally remembered who I was. I was Bedwyr the Fox, Prince of Dogfilling. I was second to Arthur of the Silures. There were men in this very city, in the streets of Sulis, who knew my name, knew who I was, as I had been in battle with Arthur. I tried to get up, and when I did, I looked around and saw a taberna up the street. I headed there now, intending to ask for work. What I found was a young woman sitting on the doorstep. She looked up at me with eyes as sad as my own. She was dark-haired and dark-eyed and pretty, though dirty like myself. I went to walk by her, but she grabbed my hand and held me back, said to me, "My cunt for hire. What will you give me for my cunt?" I said, "Do I look like a man who has money spare for coupling? Do you know if there's any work available in here?" "Oh, I was surprised by her quick response. I had been expecting a flat rejection. She went on, "My father runs this place and is always looking for boys to help him. I can take you to him. He wants a boy to help lug the beer right now." She studied me a moment and said, "You will have to scrub up, shave, wash your hair. I will tell him you are a customer of mine. He always gives favors to my customers. It keeps them in the bar and drinking his ale." She then led me into the dark interior of the taberna, introduced me to her father, Befan, who took me on right away despite my scruffy appearance. The first thing he did was order me out the back to wash and shave. He needed no brute like me showing him up in front of his clients, some of whom were warriors of Ambrosius, I was later to find out. I was to be smartened up, and I went with the girl, grateful inside, angry inside, for what had I come to now. Out in the rear courtyard, the girl filled a wooden tub with hot water, then asked me my name. I told her my name was Darius and laughed about it. "What are you laughing at?" she said. "Nothing." I stripped in front of her and got into the water. I cared not if she saw me naked. The water felt like sage magic to me, the wooden tub deep, and I found myself scrubbing at my filthy skin in disgust. The girl gave me a little bag with oatmeal in it to use as a cleaner, then ran off to find a razor and comb. When she had gone, I slipped under the water and scrubbed at my hair, even my teeth. The bath made me feel better, but as I lay there alone, out in the back courtyard, with a dog sniffing around on the ground, I remembered the sight of Khan's wonder boy on his chestnut stallion. I saw him riding out of town at the head of his troop with the standard bearer riding behind him, flying the aquila banner of Ambrosius Aurelianus, supreme commander of the mounted armies of Britain. I began to brood over the details of him, the fine shield on his back, embossed with steel, a silver-tipped scabbard for his sword, the Roman gladius at his hip, a buckler on his arm, a light mail shirt. And the helm he wore was Roman, a black horse plume falling over the silver bowl of the helmet that had a small front visor. I had never seen him looking so striking, so vibrant, like a creature from Avalon. I opened my eyes, saw the girl was back, offering me a razor and more oatmeal, blended with oils to make it easier to shave. She watched everything I did, holding a mirror for me. She said, "You have very unusual eyes. Where did you get such eyes?" I could not be bothered to answer her. How does a man explain the shape of things? Yet under my scraggly beard was my face, handsome as a fox. Here again I saw my thick, curly, dark chestnut hair clean at last, and I do have extraordinary eyes. Eyes like a fox, the Silurian always said. It had been Arthur who first saw the fox in me and named me such when I was 9 years old. I looked again into the mirror, gazed into my own hooded eyes, light brown in color and beautiful to look at, I admit that. One time a city doctor said I had eyes like an Eastern Oriental, with folds of skin that cover my lids, but I never understood what the man was talking about. Where he had seen this Eastern Oriental, no one else I had ever met had eyes shaped like mine, so I shaved clean and smiled at myself in the mirror. "Good teeth too," the girl said. "You are so handsome under this scruff, Darius. When you are clean, help my father, have some supper, then tonight you will sleep with me." Father demands it. I did everything I was told. I knew how to take orders, even if I did not like it. I was a trained soldier after all, so I lugged the man's ale, helped him serve it to his customers, cleaned up after them, after which he fed me a huge meal of fish pie and oysters, such food I had not had in months. Then he sent me to bed with his daughter when the taberna doors were closed for the night. And that night I was the girl's only client. I learned her name was Karen. And she made me strip and get in beside her. She was 18, but had been in the business of pleasuring men for money or barter since she was 13. First, she tried to relax me because I was so tense. She threw back the covers of the bed and stroked my chest, my stomach, before running her soft hands down the insides of my thighs. My rod was already standing up stiff for her to play with, and she pushed open my legs, slid down between them and began to lick me. She made me breathless. I gasped to breathe. I let go of my hurt and pain and cried out aloud, not caring who could hear me, not even her father, for she was now sucking on my virgin prick like a lover, and I had known nothing like it before. She had me begging her, "Karen, Karen, please just do it." She sighed and came up to me, looked into my eyes, disheartened me when she said, "No, not the way you want." She lay down at my side and rolled onto her stomach. She said, "You have to go in the back door." For a moment I failed to see what she meant, though when I understood her meaning I did not care. I went into her back door as she called it. This way there was no pregnancy, but as I went on I found I could not finish. My moans of pleasure turned to moans of pain. The pain was grief, a huge grief in my body. What was the Wonder Boy doing while I was taking such pleasures? Was he dying in battle with a Saxon axe smashed in his skull? Was he dying even now? I pulled out of her and slumped onto my back and began to cry. I could not help myself, and Karen held me, soothed me, stroked my hair and face and kissed my lips. She never asked why I was crying, she did not judge me, she only held me. I was so grateful to her for not asking, and I held her tight, a sweet girl in my arms. And over the days that followed, Karen did everything for me. She waited on me when she wasn't waiting on clients in the bar. After a while longer, I became obsessed with keeping her in our bed, and sometimes got up late in the mornings and angered her father with all my endless pricking of his daughter. Still, I worked day after day, and her father gave me free ale, which I drank till I was drunk most of the time. I drank because deep inside, I was broken in half. Being with Karen could not heal me, because at nights when she slept close against me, it was not her I thought of. And I cried when she was asleep, only because I had taught myself to cry quietly, and I used her father's ale to wash away my pain. Every day, I swept the bloody floors and made ale and ran errands, for my payment was Befan's daughter, his food and shelter, and everyone still called me Darius. After a while the name stopped being funny to me, it spiked me instead. My time in this taberna seemed endless. I worked harder and drank harder as the days went by. And Karen, we kept each other warm when winter came. We kissed for ages every night before I had her, before we fell asleep. Poor Karen, I could see she was beginning to love me, and though I desired her, and loved the feel of her naked body under mine, even through all of this, inside me, it was dark and broken. I wanted her and did not want her at the same moment, and I grew ever more troubled because of it. I believed it was growing time for me to find a way to leave. One night late after the inn was closed, we were in bed, stroking each other's bodies. She said to me, "I heard some men say things about war today. They said Ambrosius has put up a new young warrior before the chieftains as a possible heir to his command. I do not like this idea. I only like Ambrosius leading Britain. They say there could be a war because of it, that another is opposing Ambrosius' choice." I tried not to show too much interest, but I had to probe. I had to find out if this new young warrior was the Wonder Boy, or if he had been killed and there was another to take his place. And the thought of a coming war chilled me. If the Wonder Boy was not dead by now, he soon could be. So I asked, "What new young warrior, did they say?" "No, Darius, though they mentioned someone named Arthur a few times, and one said this warrior was stricken by the gods and is mad with falling sickness. That's all I heard and I don't like it." "No, neither do I." Being found, weeks went by. I had settled into a routine and began to drop my guard. What I did was to take off the wristband I always wore around my right wrist, the reason being to hide the skin brand I have there. I had the brand done when I was 13, a large fox head, his slim body curling around my wrist, his tail in his mouth. I had it done after the Wonder Boy named me Fox. It suited me. It was me. I was the fox, and somewhere in my distant emotions, when I looked at it scrubbed clean as often as possible, it reminded me of what I used to be. I wanted to be Bedwyr the fox again, but I was not that man anymore. I was still a deserter, and if Karen was ever to find out. But of course she saw it. It was night, we were in bed, and I was drunk again. I only wanted to sleep. The work in the taberna was tiring me out at last. Soon I knew I would rebel. I put my hand over hers, where in the pale glow from the wall light she saw the skin brand now exposed. She took hold of my wrist, sighing, "Oh Darius, it's so beautiful. Why have you hidden it for so long, a fox?" "Nothing much," I mumbled. "Darius," she looked at me deeper this time. "Who are you?" "Told you, just a bothy boy from Gwynedd coming south for work." "No, I think there is more to you. You have a bearing about you, a nobility I think it is, and I have noticed the way you quickly leave the room when any soldiers come into the bar. Why, when I looked into her dark brown eyes, I wanted to tell her, wanted to spill everything out of me in great long gasps of pain. My head was spinning and she was eyeing me, playing with my prick, nibbling my lips. I almost gave in. She was so warm, I wished I could give her more, but I couldn't. I was too confused, too much in trouble, too horrified by my own act of desertion. Why had I done it? To stop myself seeing Arthur die in battle, because I could not bear the loss of him. Our first battle, and I had almost lost him then, but to go on seeing it again and again in the future. Please, I begged the goddess of war, do not let me see him die, take me in his stead, I love him. And I found myself saying to Karen, I don't like the military, they abuse me. They want to use me to kill for them, put me on the front line where I can see my brothers being killed before my eyes. I don't want to see him die. The words slipped out, and she took my face in her hands, said, see who die? Karen, I'm drunk, leave me to sleep please, I'm so tired. She did as I asked, slipping down close beside me, and I pulled her close, and I was asleep in moments. The following morn, I refused to get out of bed, at least till mid-morning, when Karen brought me some food. And when I did go down to the bar, I found it full of soldiers. Instead of running from them, I started work serving them, with Befan scowling at me for being up late. But as the day went on, I fell into a black sorrow I could not control. Nothing could console me but ale. At last it was nearing the end of this bloody freezing winter, and the first signs of spring were growing in the hills, but I was still unhappy. Though Karen tried to help me, tried to have me love her, I could not respond as I had in the beginning. She did not understand my suffering. I felt myself closing again. Karen, I am sorry, but I'm going to hurt you, I thought, and carried on making a pig's mess of my life. And as each day went by, I began to do what I had long forced away. I started thinking again of the Silurian, but not just thinking of him. I wanted him back. I wanted to be back with him, but I did not know how. What would he think of me that I had deserted him? I did what had always been unthinkable. I ran me Bedwyr the fox. Unthinkable. I was desperate, so I drank more to try and wash everything away. In my drunkenness, I tried to find the courage to go back, to face the hellfire of what I had done. Would he hate me? Would he see me as his betrayer? Did he balk at the mere mention of my name? All of this went on in my mind, and I drank. I still worked. I slept. I stopped mounting Karen. She could see something was wrong, and she cried a lot. One day I became aware of coming summer, for a whole year had passed since I first deserted. During my absence I had turned 18, a winter child, a dark child of wicked hill lands and black forests. The Wonder Boy, if he still lived, would be 17, a child of spring, a bright child golden in his skin. So summer came again, and I was passed out drunk on a seat in the taberna on a quiet day with very few customers. It was dark and cool inside. My eyes were closed, and deep somewhere in a dream I felt someone take hold of my shirt and haul me out of my chair and stand me on my feet. I tried to focus my eyes, and what I saw, the Wonder Boy standing before me. He laughed and smiled, turning to the others standing around him. Vaguely I could make out shapes in the darkness. One was Gareth ap Gan, the other was Kai Long Man. Valerius ap Waylan was there too, plus others I did not recognize, not even if I had been sober. But finally, when it rang bells in my head who I was looking at, I staggered back and fell over a stool and dropped helpless onto a bench, so shocked I almost wept. I don't know why you bother, I heard Kai whisper to Arthur before he turned and walked away outside. So I sat on the bench, my heart thrashing in my throat, and Arthur himself looking like nothing on earth. He looked sun-browned, as if he had been out in the heat all June. He was dressed in light lamella armor, though he was without his helmet. He looked taller, imposing. He had cut his hair short. He was clean-shaven like a Roman. Changed but still himself, still with his smile, his laugh as he threw himself down beside me and looked at me. I had to look away. I did not want him seeing the mess I was, my shame. He said, "You don't need to hide from me." And he pulled on my arm, trying to pull me into an embrace, but I wouldn't let him. "Let go, I am not ready for this. I've been looking for you all this time, but you hid yourself well. Come on, Fox." This was when it hit me, when he called me Fox. When I heard his voice saying my name, no one could say it like he did. This was when I knew he was real. I tried to get up, but he pulled me back down again. "Fox," he said. I was beginning to crack. He told me, "We can stay for only one night if you're not ready to go right now. I can see you're not ready to just walk away from here." In the shadows I saw Karen standing, watching. The look on her face was indescribable. She came and stood over us and said, "I know who he is," pointing at Arthur. "Darius, you are a friend to him, and you never told me the truth. I see it now. You are Bedwyr the Fox." She looked at me, she looked at Arthur, and could not draw her gaze away from him. His hand gripped around my wrist. He said, "What do you want to do?" "I have only till tomorrow, then I have to return to Viraconium." "Orders." "Are you going to war?" I begged him. "What's been happening to you? What's Ambrosius done to you? Have the chieftains accepted you as heir? There's pain in your eyes. Did I do that? What happened? Tell you later. Shall we stay or go? I have a troop outside waiting. If we're staying, I have to stable the horses and find lodging for the men." It was still early in the day, and I answered, "We go. I just have to." "To Karen here." Arthur then looked at Karen. He surely could see there was something between me and her. He stood up and was about to move away to give us some time, but he stopped and whispered to me, "Do you think the innkeeper will give me some free ale, because it's me?" He looked at me hard, and I just had to laugh at him. I called, "Befan, please, give my friend a drink." I took Karen's hand and went upstairs with her to say farewell. She was already crying by the time we came into the little garret room we had shared all these months. I swept her into my arms and kissed her. "You have to go," she cried against my chest. "I'm so sorry, Karen, I'm so sorry I'm hurting you. Breaking my heart is what you're doing. I love you, don't go." "I have to. I must go back and face what I ran from. I cannot stay. If I stay, I would go insane and you would end up hatting me. You have to say farewell now." "No, no, no." And she started grabbing at me, pulling me back, trying to have me stay. But I pulled out of her grasp, all the time feeling wretched. I went looking around for what few things I had gathered over the months and packing them into a satchel. I had managed to get new boots for the work I had done, but not much else. I did not even have a cloak. As I packed, Karen stood sobbing, heartbroken. But the thing in me was boiling, the feeling to be out of here and away. I was mad to get on a horse and ride as a warrior again, with the standard snapping over my head into battle, shield up and sword drawn. My hand aching to feel the steel gripped around my fingers. I could already feel the helmet hard on my head and my horse cantering strongly beneath me. No woman could give me this feeling. My hands shook as I laced my boots. Swiftly I had to make myself sober, but my hands were shaking from the anticipation of riding out with a troop of warriors at my back and Arthur. I could not fathom how or why I had almost thrown it all away. "Oh goddess," I bounded down the stairs, mad to leave, and when I came down there was Arthur and Kai drinking at the bar. Wasting time drinking. I grabbed Arthur's arm. He looked at me, could see it in my eyes, and he put his tankard down, and together we ran out into the square. Behind us Kai moaned about the loss of his drink, but he came lumbering after us. "Ride," Arthur called, and that is what we did. He had even brought a horse for me, and for the first time in a long time I was up on horseback and heeling away, first a trot, then a group canter that had the people of the city turning to watch us leave, stopping in their tracks, and some hailing us. I looked back once and saw Karen standing outside the taberna door. Deep painful longing showed on her face, but nothing could stop me now. I felt the hurt of leaving her in my guts, but when Valerius lifted the Aquila standard and the townspeople came out to watch us ride, I went with regret and newfound power both at once. We rode north out of town, then turned into the west, and followed the river to the coast to the port of Aboni, riding for a long time under a hot summer sun, the wind in my face, the thud of horses' hooves beneath me. I had not been on horseback for such a long time, yet it was all still there deeply fixed in my being. I felt the sun on my face, and I sweated with the effort. I was out of training, unlike those who rode around me, where I noticed for the first time two new faces riding just behind Kai, a tall thin blonde youth with stringy hair, and a smaller darker one, even smaller than Gareth, with dark curly hair and high cheekbones. We rode till we came to the coast road. Arthur took a turn to the north, and we came trotting into a glade down by the beach of the Sabrina shore out from Aboni and the ferry that went over the sea to Ventus Silurum. He rode into the glade, pulled up his horse and jumped off easily, all without a sign of tiredness. With him went Kai and Gareth and half the troop into the bushes to piss away the beer they had earlier swallowed. I did the same, almost pissing on my own feet, as I was so tired, about to drop, and I was starving. Around me everyone began to move. They knew what to do without orders, and they unpacked their horses, posted a guard, the tall blonde youth, and the rest of us found somewhere to sit and eat. As all of this was going on, Arthur went and stood by the banks of the estuary and stared away over the water. I did not know what I should do. I felt out of place, so I stood and watched him. He was taller than the last time I had seen him. I approached him, stood at his side and looked across the water, trying to see what he was looking at. Reading me, he said, "Ventus Silurum, city of the Cilias, I've never seen it. Silurian territory, I know, but remember you were born in those lands. In the Black Mountains," Lord Darfod said. It was a beautiful day, and the smell of the water was rich and clean. Maybe he wanted to swim to Siluria, but then he turned aside and we went to have some lunch. As we ate, Kai spent all of his time staring at me, animosity, rebuke, even disgust shown on his face. I heard him say the same he had said to Arthur earlier. "I don't know why you bother with him, he's a liability." Then at me, "Arthur never once gave up on you, but I did." The others watched and listened, maybe hoping for a fight, but getting into a fight with Kai was sheer stupidity. He could hit a man once with his massive fist, and the man would ever get up again. I just did not have the weapons to fight him, but inside I felt he was right. I had done something unthinkable and had shamed all of my clan brothers, shamed myself even more. Arthur sat quietly, changed somehow. When I looked at him, I could see it in his eyes. He said to me, "Bedwyr, these two here are Tegid ap Peda and Llwch ap Rhys. They came to me from Luguvalos." Amazed, I said, "From your father's camp?" He nodded, and his enigmatic smile, the smile I knew so well, formed on his lips. Kai said to me very loudly, "They are like you deserters." The two new boys stirred. Arthur said, "Not deserters, just clever. I have supporters over in my father's camp and they chose me over him and came south to join me. That's not deserting, that's playing the right dice." Everyone sat quietly. Here I supposed Arthur could sense the tension within us, and he stood up saying, "Pack up, we're leaving. We can camp farther north and get up early in the morning and be home by sunset. I don't want to rush these horses." We came to our feet, packing up and moving on, traveling north up the coast road, till we stopped to camp for the night in another oakwood glade, somewhere north and west of Glevum, safe territory, deep inside Dobunny lands, allies of Ambrosius Cornovier. But even here, Llwch stood on guard, for he seemed a natural-born lookout and stalker. What the other one was good for, Tegid, I had no idea, but he was quiet and minded his own business well. Then, when it was dark and we had a fire blazing under the trees, I found out what Tejid was good for. He brought out a pot from his pack and started cooking up some kind of camp stew that he said he had learned from an old campaigner from the continent. We ate our stew from wooden bowls with wooden spoons, and after, we sat looking into the fire. Gareth on my left was as quiet as always, staring down at the ground. Kai stomping up and down, bored and wanting to go to sleep. LLWCH roaming around on guard, Tejid clearing up, and then Valerius sitting on my right. Arthur, he moved away from us and did what he did before, stood and looked into the west, with nothing to see in the darkness. I could sense something was badly wrong with him. I had felt it all along. I looked at Val, at everyone whose faces were shadowed and firelit. Val began to tell me the story of what had happened to Arthur over the past year. And as I listened, my heart grew cold and heavy. A lump formed in my throat that wouldn't shift as Valerius told me how Arthur had been ordered by Ambrosius to lead an attack on a Saxon longhouse, and how the commander had ordered the killing of 3 Saxon girls they had taken as prisoners. Val told me he tried to stop one of Ambrosius' men from killing the girls. You remember Sinon Aurelius? I nodded. Sinon Aurelius, Arthur's closest rival for the supreme command, so Aurelius was still a huge menace. Val went on, Sinon raped one of the Saxon girls, and Arthur saw him do it, saw him kill her with a sword blow to her skull. And what made it all so hard was the girls were looking to Arthur to save them. He could not, of course. But ever since then he's been quiet and subdued. He will get over it in time, Kai said, sitting with us and behaving himself. Just give him some time, he'll get over it. I said, no, not something like that, he won't. You don't know him like I do. He has a deep regard for women. He cherishes them. Seeing women hurt is something he can never accept. This is bad, really, really bad. Kai said, women are his weakness, they are his weakness, he cares too much. Everyone fell quiet again. Kai now going on, increasing my unease by telling me, you should have seen what happened to him after he found out you were gone, deserter. He thought you had betrayed him, deserter. I glared at the bastard. I don't want to know. No, course you don't. But you are not getting out of this without a scar. Running away, hightailing it into the wilds and leaving him without his best friend. He went mad. What in all hellfire did you do it for? I should thump you for it. I saw his hand turn into a fist and I sat back saying, what do you mean? It's true, Val added to my misery. Arthur went off at Ambrosius to find you and get you back again. The old man couldn't cope with him, swearing and cursing and throwing things around, and in the end, Ambrosius had him put in the cage and chained him to the wall. Chained him up, I said. Oh, Kai said. Ambrosius had him arrested and put in prison for being insubordinate. They chained him to the wall, and he fought like a bear to get free. Kai seemed delighted with it all. He always found Arthur a constant source of free entertainment. I did not like his enjoyment at all, and was finally feeling eager to thump him, even if it meant myself being pummeled to raw red meat. Still, Kai gave me more. He went on like that for 3 whole days. I think he thought maybe you had been taken hostage somewhere, maybe with Sinon Aurelius' cronies, taken for ransom because you are a prince. We had to force him to see you had just run away, because you are such a bastard and a liability. Then he went all quiet, like he is now. Only then could we let him out safely. I swallowed my horror, finding myself trying to say I was sorry, even to Kai. As I was trying to get these words out, Gareth spoke up. Now there's going to be a lot of trouble, maybe even war. Arthur's got Sinon Aurelius at his back, and my spies tell me it's possible Ambrosius will choose Aurelius over Arthur to take the supreme command. Now Ambrosius thinks Arthur is too uncontrollable, and the way he refused orders to lead the attack on the Longhouse sealed it with him. I think Arthur's going for a fall. Shit, I swore. He will take the command, you just watch and see, You bastards don't even know him if you think that. I'm the one he needs to talk to. And I got up and walked away from them, hurting myself for what I had done to him. I found him standing by a tree and again watching the water, and when he heard me approach, he turned to face me. I could see he wanted in a desperate way to tell me what had happened to him. I said it for him, what happened at the Longhouse. Tell me or it will eat into you forever. And Arthur did not balk at telling me at once. I should talk to you. I saw his pain in his eyes, his hurt, his anger, his feelings of betrayal. Would he hear my poor excuses? I looked at him with my own sorrow. I said, no, you needn't talk to me. Things went wrong, Arthur, inside me. Everything went wrong with black confusion. Madness took me, not cowardice or a need to betray those I love, for I loved too deeply in the wrong way. Forgive me. He looked away into the night. He said, not yet. Then tell me of the Longhouse and let me come back to you. He sighed and told me his story without a sound of passion, only smothered anguish. Ambrosius, he ordered me to lead an attack against a single Longhouse. There was no one there, only a handful of Saxon men and their women. I refused his orders. I told him I would only attack military targets, not houses with women and children. I refused. So he led the attack himself, and I had to sit and watch it all happen. It made me sick. I saw him swallow his pain, his memories. He went on, they set fire to the Longhouse, and that's when I rode in. I thought I could control it somehow or try to stop the killing. He slumped down at the base of the tree, sat still, hanging his head and covering his eyes with his hands. He stopped for a long time, then said, our soldiers pulled the women out, 3 young girls around our age. Ambrosius ordered them killed. I tried to stop it, Fox, I did, but the men obeyed him. But the girls, they could see I was trying to fight for their lives, and they were looking at me to save them, but I couldn't. They took the girls out into the woods. I couldn't see what was happening, but I heard screaming, and when I went into the trees, I found him, you know, Sinon Aurelius, the one who's trying to take the supreme command. I saw him rapping one of the girls. He stopped again. Go on, what happened next? I saw him split the girl's head open with his sword. He raped her, then split her skull, and I saw him do it. I went mad. The others had to hold me down. They had to tie my hands and put me on my horse and keep me a prisoner. Took me to Dinas Imrais and locked me up until I calmed down. Ambrosius wouldn't allow me to go back to Viraconium until I learnt my lesson. You know what lesson? He looked up at me as I stood over him. I shook my head, no. The lesson of Saxon women, he said. Those Saxon women who settle in our lands, they birth the most dangerous kind of Saxon, he said. They birth the British-born Saxon, and that's the most dangerous kind of Saxon of all, as being born in Britain then gives them a claim to our lands, so they must die, even their children. I will never accept it. Not even if I take supreme command, I won't ever accept it. I stood horrified by his experiences while I had merely gone mad, so we were quiet for a moment. Till he said, when I looked at the Saxon girl, Fox, she was lying there all broken and defenseless on the ground. I cannot forget it. The vision of it is stuck in my head, and it's been there ever since. I felt alone in the world. You, my one true friend and brother, were gone. Anger sounded in his voice. He said, why did you do it to me, to yourself, to your father? I swallowed hard and said, all I can say is I'm sorry. From the bottom of my heart, I'm sorry. Something happened inside me. Something went wrong in my mind, something dark and wild. I broke. I was so confused, torn between everything, you, my father, my clan, the army, everything. I'm sorry I went mad. He gazed at me, then nodded. I thought so. You're a strange breed, my friend, wayward and wild and mad. He laughed a little. Will you stay now and be a good barrack boy for me? He made me laugh. We both smiled a little. Was never a good barrack boy, not even a good boy, and somewhere inside me I knew I never would be. I put a hand on his shoulder. I said, one day I'll explain it better than now, for now I cannot fathom it myself. He took my hand and began crushing my fingers in his. Such a cracked bastard you are, Fox. You don't need to explain it. Master Khan always said you walk to a beat all of your own, and you do, that no regulation army step could force you to be what you are not. This is what I have to learn to accept. He stood up and told me, when I was captured there in Dina's Emrise, I wanted to tell you how I could have saved those girls, all too late now, but I could have saved them. How? What could you have done to stop it? Because Ambrosius wanted me to take control of that attack, and all I had to do was accept it, accept the power he gave me, and I could have stopped them from killing the girls by being the leader he wanted me to be. But I refused his orders, and he took the power away from me. I could have stopped it. I shook my head at him. That's not the way to think, blaming yourself for the actions of others. I know, that's what Lord Darford said too, said Ambrosius is losing control and is ill, that Sinan is getting under the old man's skin. I wanted Sinan disciplined for what he did, but Ambrosius ignored it all. In the end, Darford said it was the will of the old gods that the Saxon girls should live short and die in violence, and so may we. I failed them, but next time I won't. Darford thinks I'm a force to be reckoned with. He said I'm a rescuer. All I said was to go and find Bedwyr, and here you are. You should listen to Lord Darford then, because you are what he said you are, a rescuer. You did that to me today. You rescued me, and maybe that was what I wanted, you to rescue me. We faced each other. We fell on each other, and I held him so tight. Nothing mattered anymore, for I was home with Arthur. On the final leg towards Viraconium the next day, and coming closer to the city and its busy village crowds, I could barely cloak my fear. Riding in through those gates, those same I had ridden out of over a year gone in some kind of mind madness, I could not bear it, but I had to face it, face all those within the barracks. So ashamed I rode with my head down, hoping no one would notice me. Just as we were about to reach the gates, Arthur pulled alongside me and said, "Don't sweat, I've smoothed it over with Ambrosius to have you treated leniently. We are lucky. I think I can pull you out of the really bad punishments." I tried to smile, but he said, "You have gone white. I told you don't fret, you are with me, right?" We reached the bloody gatehouse, and there was a new gatekeeper, a younger man this time, haughty and smug, and I took against him at once. The way he looked at me, like his bollocks were up his arse instead of between his legs where they were supposed to be. Arthur gave the password and the gates opened, and in we trotted, and all before anyone or anything could hurt me. He took hold of the reins of my horse and turned its head for Ambrosius' private quarters. "The sooner we get this over with, the better," he told me. "If you draw it out, it will be worse for you." Having been gone so long, I really did not know what kind of power Arthur had over the old man now, but I soon enough found myself standing in front of him outside his quarters, himself standing on the raised portico of his wooden-built villa. Lord Ambrosius Aurelianus, Supreme Commander of British armies, all tall and thin and old, with long grey hair. On either side of him guarded his favorite attendants, including Sinan Aurelius, everyone standing in the late afternoon sun before Ambrosius could go in and have his meager supper. Old Master Khan was here too, even fatter. The whole bloody time Arthur stood beside the commander, looking at him with an unflinching gaze. I stood up straight, trying to pretend I was a good soldier. Ambrosius just stared at me with watery eyes. After a moment of thought, he said, "So, the prince returns." He came down from his platform and came and stood in my face. He breathed on me. "The only reason, boy, why I will not have you executed for your desertion is because you are a noble born, a prince of my ally, your father, who I must say, paid me a large compensation price for your actions, to save your life, and to keep this little madness of yours quiet, not to mention Arthur's various promises to me on your behalf. Now get out of here, and if you ever do anything like this again, you will be flogged to an inch of your life." I shook in my boots, and as he turned away, he said, "Khan, break him to foot soldier, have the drill master work him over, give him the Roman marching punishment for as long as you want." He finally turned away and went off with his cronies. I stood still and Arthur ran down the steps to join me, saying, "Perfect, that's good, he did what I wanted him to do." I answered him, "He wants to flog me, and now Roman marching, you know how I hate marching. Fox, he was going to have you executed." "I know," he told me. "And your father had to pay him a huge compensation price to keep this quiet." "I know, he told me that too. And I bloody nearly had to prick his old hairy ass to save you, but he gave in to me in the end. Do the marching for now, and I'll see if I can get you off even that. See you later." And he ran back up the stairs after Ambrosius and his train. I was in shock, so Master Khan grabbed me by the collar and marched me back to barracks. Now Roman marching. Marching was naught but hellfire to me. My whole life I had suffered with pain in my left hip and knee for some strange reason, and marching made it hurt so bad I could be curled up in agony for days. My father once had a doctor tell him my pain was due to a misaligned hip joint. I had always walked odd, a kind of left-sided lope, and left-handed too. I was a misaligned warrior in more ways than one, and Arthur knew it. I was depending on him to get me out of my own mess. Winning the sword. I came across the practice square, aching in every bone in my body, my hip burning in pain. Pain went shooting down my leg to my foot. Khan had been giving me the treatment all week. I marched and bloody marched, carrying a fully packed kit pole and with a shield on my back. I had marched 25 Roman miles, and I was dead and weeping with pain and heat when I got back to barracks. Home, I threw the pole down and collapsed onto the floor, rested back against the wall, dying. The pain was so bad I was about to beg Khan for something to wash it all away, was about to start crying like a little boy and smelling my own sweaty stink when I looked up to see a dark figure appear in the doorway. He came over to me and lifted me up and dropped me onto a pallet, looked at me seriously, his dark eyes alight. He said, "It's all over, I've mended it, you are free. You will never again have to answer to anyone here, not to Khan, not to any of his bully boys, you are free. Come on, get up, I'll help you." In vain he tried to make me stand, but I just could not do it. "It hurts too much, Arthur, please don't make me stand. I've marched 25 miles today, can't you get me something for the pain?" I fell back down again and he went away, came back with a bucket of cold water, put it down at my feet, and I leant over and splashed my face and wetted down my hair. I grimaced in pain. While I was doing all this, Arthur began packing up and down. No one was around. Khan had the boys all out somewhere torturing them. Arthur said, "I can get you to a warm bath that will soothe the pain. Something happened and I've got you out of here." He stopped packing and pulled out a rolled-up scroll from under his belt, telling me, "Where, Khan? I have written orders for him to release you. Look." He unrolled the scroll, and in bloody Latin words he knew I could barely read, he showed me the orders. "You know I don't read that Roman shit, what does it say?" "It says to release you from under Khan's charge and into mine. I did a deal with Ambrosius last night. I wouldn't budge till I had you back with me as my lieutenant. Do you understand, you brat? You are my lieutenant now, promoted, signed by Ambrosius himself. See," and he shoved it into my face. He could hardly contain himself. For me it was taking time to sink in. I was in too much pain. I began unlacing my Roman hobnail boots, wanting to soak my feet in the cold water in the bucket, which I did. I said, "Do not call me a brat. So you did a deal, you are always doing deals. It's your strategy. Did you say I'm free of this bloody place?" It was finally beginning to shine in my head. "Free forever," he said, "forever. No one is ever going to take you from me again. We are one and the same, me and you. only different sides to the same thing, like a coin with different faces, but still one thing. My lieutenant, you are coming with me now over to Ambrosius' quarters, where it's a lot more comfortable than this pigsty. I looked at him, astonished, stammered, but what deal? What deal could you have wrangled to get me out of this? This was when he looked away, out of the door towards the practice square. Evening light was falling softly over the hard-packed earth. He looked back at me and said, I have to marry his daughter, Lady Ronwen. In exchange, I wanted you freed. He said no. I said yes. I said, if you want your daughter to marry me, I won't do it unless Bedwyr comes to me. This went on for a long time, most of the night. He really wanted her to marry Aurelius, but I said no, I'll marry her instead, but only on my terms. The old man agreed in the end. My pain was gone and I roared, you marry Ambrosius' daughter. We soldiers had all seen her many times around the camp, and she was as ugly as a horse's rear hole. I just sat with my feet in the bucket and laughed. You must be head-struck. He started stalking up and down again in the way he did. Where Khan, I have to give him this order. Up and down he paced. You really mean it? You are getting married to Ronwen? The girl is a horse's ass. He turned on me. That's not the point. The point is it gets you out of here, because by hellfire, if Ambrosius ever finds out about the horse you stole, he will have you executed. If you want to come with me, I have to marry his daughter. Now listen, she's really not so bad. She was there last night at dinner, and I can tell you, she's not so bad, and he buckled under my scorn, grabbed me and shoved my boots into my hands, saying, follow me or stay here and rot. He walked out, bumping into Khan, who was coming in. Arthur shoved his orders into the master's fat, sweaty hands and said, say goodbye to torturing my friend, he's coming with me. I took off when I saw the orders being read and the look on Khan's face. I took my boots and ran, following Arthur out into the square, then out again into the main street. As I followed him, I tried to put my boots back on, hopping and running before catching him up. He walked fast and I started to limp. All of the shops were still open, and I wondered if I could get him to buy some powders for my pain. It was coming back again. But Arthur was serious, and I pulled him to stop and dragged him down a side street. I said to him right to his face, no, you are not doing this just for me but for her. He slumped against a building and said, I know, I just couldn't let her go to that insane murdering bastard Aurelius. Ambrosius wants her to marry him, but he's insane, a killer and a raper. I saw then a way out. If I offered to marry her instead, I could use the marriage as a bargaining tool to free you. It worked. No, the old man been after you for a long time to marry his daughter. He has been after me for a long time to marry Ronwen, then pitting me against Sinan, to see which one of us is the better match for her. He put me to single combat with Aurelius while you were gone. I thrashed the brainless prick, and now the commander has accepted me to marry her. If I marry Lady Ronwen, of course, I'll be above Aurelius in favor for the supreme command. If Aurelius gains command, we're dead, all of us, all of Britain, and Ronwen's really not so bad. She has beautiful fair skin, so she may not be a beauty, but there I am doing it for her. Are you happy now? I think you are brilliant. And I could only stand and look at him, knowing what a prize Ronwen had been given in him. When we faced each other now, we embraced in a tight hug, and I whispered, I'm so sorry for what I did. It was all too much for me, and I lost my way. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I know you hurt me badly. You have a lot of work to do to make up for it, but I know now you had to do what you did. Let's go. I'll get you a warm bath and something for your pain. You will be fine in the morning, and then you can meet Ronwen. And Arthur did what he said. He came and pulled me out of bed early next morning and took me on a tour of the commander's private quarters, took me to the stores and dressed me in fine warrior garb, full battle kit, a fish-scale armored tunic, and new lamella riding breeches. My weapons were a gladius, a cavalry spear, and a brace of javelins. The night before in the bath I had to shave, look neat and tidy, cut my hair to collar length, and with my hair now tied back, and carrying my new kit, I was taken to the tiny cell that was to be mine. Here I got dressed, and followed Arthur out to breakfast. We ate in a small officer's dining hall, and Arthur spent a long time flirting with the serving woman. It seemed he did this to her every morning, flirting with her to have her serve him extra helpings. Roman toast was his favorite, but of course, the maid gave in to him and spooned him an extra round, and with extra honey. I sat quiet, again feeling new and out of place. I was no longer a worker and barkeep myself, but someone who was served. I said to Arthur when he sat down next to me with his overlarge helpings, "What am I supposed to do all day, my duties? Just behave yourself. Don't fret, there's plenty of work to do around here. You will probably have to go over to Khan and help him train his new recruits, but he cannot boss you around, or at least you can let him pretend he's bossing you around. But most of the time we work with the horses, training them for battle." Other young warriors were now coming in, all enlisted to Arthur's new unit, though all still under Ambrosius' overall command. Here I recognized most of them, as they had all been in training with us in previous years. LLWCH and Tejid came in with Gareth and Kai, then Val alone. They joined us at our bench, and I knew none of them knew Arthur was getting married, the announcement of which was to come later in the day. Everything was fine till Sinon Aurelius himself walked in. I looked up at him from my seat as he came and stood over us, staring at Arthur with death in his eyes that I could clearly see held unspeakable hate, a desperate hate that bordered on madness, and I knew madness when I saw it. Sinon said to Arthur, "One day, you Silurian pig spawn, I will mangle everything you touch, everything you think you own or command, I will find and destroy. You won't get away with this, you will pay. I'll have you pay so much you will beg me on your knees to be released from the torture I'll give you. You won't get away with this." Arthur stood to meet him, face to face, taller than Aurelius by half a head, told him, "One day, you murdering bastard, you will be calling me Supreme Commander, and when that happens, I'll make you pay for what you have done. I'm not going to let you take command. It's all over, Sinon, all your hopes and dreams. I've already beaten you once, and now I control your every thought." Everyone was silent, looking at Aurelius, for he had no supporters here, and I turned aside and went on with my breakfast. The others followed my lead, and we all went back to our food, ignoring the man, as he meant nothing to us. Arthur too sat back down and finished his breakfast, leaving Aurelius to stand like a frustrated fool. After another moment more, he turned and stalked away. Arthur slammed down his mug, got up, and said to me, "Ready?" I shrugged, and followed him out of the hall, leaving everyone to sit. Later that same afternoon, all of us attending warriors were summoned into Lord Ambrosius' private campaign room. We gathered, dressed in our kit, stood straight and waited, and when the door opened, Ambrosius himself came in with a train of high-ranking captains following, with lawyers and priests and officials, and they all packed into the room so Ambrosius could formally announce that his daughter was going to marry the young Silurian warrior, Arthur, son of Uther Pendragon. Gasps went around the room before a chorus of congratulations and all the rest of it, with everyone congratulating Ambrosius as Arthur stood next to me, being polite and showing a spirit of graciousness in his 17-year-old self that had me watching in awe and bewilderment. Everyone began talking and laughing. Our friends were staring at him open-mouthed, stunned, brainless, that any man would want to marry Lady Ronwen, the horse-faced daughter of Ambrosius Aurelianus. No one congratulated Arthur. All the attention was on Ambrosius, because at last he had found a dupe to marry his daughter, and all the men were talking to him, while the rest of us had to stay in our formal ranks and not move. A door then opened at the far end of the room, and Lady Ronwen herself came in, dressed beautifully and carrying a small dark polished wooden box. With her were two handmaids, both girls looking lovelier than Ronwen by far. I studied her carefully, looking for the things about her that Arthur had said. Her skin was fair enough and unblemished. Her hair was a fine honey blonde, which she wore long and swept over her left shoulder and down over her left breast. Her breasts were large with a fine white cleavage. None of this improved her face. Her eyes were small and pale green, and she had a nose, more like a man's nose, big and with a hump. Her lips were no shape really, and no one I knew would ever cock her willingly. But when she came into the room, Ambrosius called, "I present my daughter, the Lady Ronwen," and she came forward and stood before Arthur and opened the box she carried. He looked down into the box, where lay a finely crafted solid gold torque, which she took out. She passed the box to one of her handmaids, reached up and put the torque around Arthur's neck. They joined hands, and she gazed at him in wonder. He did not take his eyes off her face. Anyone watching would have believed he was desperately in love with her. For Arthur, Ronwen fell into a mooning trance of some kind, and Ambrosius said, "Now then, a formal engagement is made. The wedding will be on the first day of Augustus, here in the gardens by the Chapel of Christ." Again everyone cheered and made a fuss, and all I wanted to do was get outside before I did something foolish. At last men were going up to Arthur and shaking his hand, smiling at him as if he was simple. He was polite and still held Ronwen's hand. Her small green eyes blinked at him, for it was obvious she was out of her mind in love with him. Outside in the courtyard, a trestle table was set with food and drink, and everyone was supposed to go out and enjoy the engagement party. My head was beginning to pound, and I wanted to go and drink. Lord Ambrosius called everyone now to break up, dismissed us soldiers, and Kai went cackling like a goose at Arthur when he walked by us. Val came over and offered congratulations, as Val was always well-mannered, then Gareth, and all of them before they dashed outside to the food. When everyone had gone, Arthur finally let go of his reserve. He took Ronwen and turned her to me. I stepped back, but he grabbed me and pulled me closer, saying, "Prince Bedwyr, meet Lady Ronwen," and she turned to me and smiling bowed her head. For him I took up her hand and kissed it. "My lady." We looked at each other. I had to get out of her way, so I saluted Arthur in Roman fashion, as he was my superior officer, a unit captain. I turned to leave and Arthur came with me. Outside I turned to him and said in a tight whisper, "This is for life. You are going to be stuck with her for life. You don't love her. You cannot do this. It's too late now. I have to. What do you think it would do to her to retreat now like a coward? What would that make me? And I've managed to convince Ambrosius to invite Medraut to the wedding. It's going to be interesting." And he walked out after his blushing bride-to-be. And so, during the time before the wedding, I went over to Khan and learned how to be a trainer and drill master. I took some of his new boys under my care before we were rounded up by Lord Ambrosius and given orders to ride out, summer skirmishing. On a sunny morning, we gathered before the city gates, horses ready, with Ambrosius standing there, now giving a rolled-up parchment of orders to his future son-in-law. Arthur took his orders and was just about to move to his horse when Ronwen came forward and took his arm. Here I watched her try and kiss him goodbye, like someone who really did not know what to do in such a moment. I felt the urge to laugh at her, because she tripped over her own feet, not knowing whether to do what she wanted or not. Instead, he kissed her on her cheek, and there came a roaring cheer from the warriors watching. We took then to our horses and rode out of Viraconium in a mounted troop of 80 riders, all heading east, intending to move towards Saxon territory before turning south, due to return in time to see our leader so happily married. All day we rode along the Roman road towards the old Roman camp of Letostum, all without a great deal of talk, for we had a job to do, border patrol, scouting, and just generally being seen to be doing our job. Past Letostum, we turned east again and rode for a few leagues before setting up camp. Then we were up early and moving out at dawn as usual, rode for near on 3 leagues, crossed the Tameses water, moved off the Eichnield way, and stopped on a high hilltop. Here we looked down into a wide valley below, saw there was a rough-made road alongside the river, and on the road we saw men coming down into the valley, a large band of Saxon warriors on the march. The morning was overcast, but the early sun was trying to break through and the day would be sunny enough for a battle. I knew Arthur would not let this Saxon rabble go by unchecked. He said as he looked down into the valley, "They're heading for the river ford. There's one of our villages there. They must be going to attack it." Gareth, our scout, rode up, and Arthur ordered him to take Tegid and ride into the village and warn the inhabitants of a possible Saxon attack. Gareth saluted and took off at speed with Tegid at his side. Both of them the fastest riders we had, both of them small and light in build. They were no burden to their horses. We watched the Saxons coming on for a while longer, counting their numbers. Greater than us, they numbered around 120 men, all carrying shields and spears, and were moving at a fairly fast pace. As they came closer to us, we moved back out of sight along the ridge top and dismounted. We gathered together and Arthur said, "The village is still a long march for them down the riverside, and if they keep to their course, as they will, we can stop them on this road before the ford. They are blocked on their right by this ridge that runs up into the western hills. Kai, take your men and cut off their rear. The rest of us will flank them on their right. We will wait till they reach the ford. This will cut them off in front as we defend that line." Valerius protested. "This is dangerous, Arthur." "Val, they will walk themselves out. It's ours to the ford, but I'm not letting them get close enough to attack civilians. Come on now, keep out of sight till I move." The road below turned out long and winding in some parts, but it stayed mostly on a straight course southwards. The Saxons were trotting in their band, but were beginning to straggle out after another hour. We followed, tracking a course above them along the ridge top and keeping out of sight. The sun rose to a warm morning, and as the leagues dragged on, the Saxons began to straggle out even more. They must have been on the march for more than a day, for reasons we could have no knowledge of. Maybe they were on a revenge attack for something done to them in the past. But whatever the reasons, they were determined and stuck to their course. Their leader, a tall, well-armed man with a red beard, shouted a lot at the stragglers. As it neared midday, they came into a wide area with a crop field on their left. Ahead some short way was the river ford that they would not be allowed to cross. This was a sign we were nearing the village, and it was here that Arthur moved. Kai turned aside and rode down behind the enemy war host to cut off their line of retreat, while the rest of us came down in single file in front. And when the Saxons saw us coming down out of the hills, they staggered to a stop and were about to charge us when their leader halted them. Some of them turned to the rear for escape, but when they saw Kai's men forming up in an attack wedge and their spears down, all lined along the length of the road behind, they turned forward, turned back, turned to the side, and as they did, we rode down the full length of their band and turned our shields to their right flank in a cavalry testudo formation. We thrust out our spears through the gaps in our shield wall. And there the enemy did what Arthur knew they would. They broke for the freedom of the field on their left, and when they did, we charged. As we came at them, they scattered without even attempting to cluster into a shield wall like all Saxon war hosts did. The rabble of them scattered into the crop field as their escape route, and Arthur led us at a charge, spearing them as they ran and using our wedge formation to cut through the stragglers. No cohesion amongst them, disordered, they fled deeper into the field. Arthur then ordered Val's unit to fight along the line before the ford, herding Saxons down into the river if they could, and spearing them in the water. I kept always at Arthur's side, and as our unit moved in, more and more Saxons tried to flee back the way they had come, only to find Kai's men blocking their retreat. I caught a glimpse of Kai jumping down from his horse and smashing a man in the face with the boss of his shield, then through the Saxon's chest with his gladius. Another warrior had caught his horse, and Kai was up again, charging through the mass. I pulled my spear upright, as me and Arthur rode down some fleeing warriors and impaled them through their backs, before wheeling again for another charge, my spear down, Arthur's sword in his hand striking against unprotected heads, as so many of them had no helmets. All around us, horsemen were moving in and out, Saxons trying to charge us, but we retreated too far out of reach, kept on their outer flanks and slicing through them from the edges of the field, cutting through their exposed sides. We kept to a constant round of retreat and attack, playing by training. Every time we regrouped, we charged again, keeping to an order that had the enemy constantly trying to defend. Still they scattered before us, and when we thought it was dragging on too long and we would lose too many men and horses, Gareth and Tegid returned ahead with a small band of men on foot from the village. They came on screaming with whatever weapons they could find from home. Arthur turned and rode back to the reinforcements, dismounted, and came in on foot with the townsmen. Hand to hand he fought, and I could not believe what I was seeing, for he was fighting his way towards the Saxon leader as our horsemen cut down their warriors from around him. I charged my horse forward, shielding him as he fought towards the red-bearded Saxon leader, who was being protected in the center by a ring of his last remaining men. I watched as Arthur attacked through the mass of them, 3 against him, 2 went down with spears in their backs, while the last smashed Arthur's shield with an axe. I forced my horse through, stuck another 2 Saxons with my spear, then took to riding in circles around Arthur as he continued to fight his way forward, all the time pushing in closer and closer to their red-bearded leader. I forced through on my horse, striking out with my sword. With the townsmen now backing us, we numbered near 100 fighting men, more than the enemy, as we had cut so many of them down. Around us the battle was beginning to thin, and the enemy leader realized he was surrounded by our horsemen. From then on, we kept on cutting into them as they tried to retreat, Kai riding in from the rear and chopping his way through the remaining defenders, who were fighting for their very lives. Only a handful left standing. Sweat strung my eyes as again I charged between Arthur and the red-bearded Saxon leader. I kicked another man in the face, then cried at Arthur, "Get back to your horse." The few remaining Saxons rushed in against us. There was nothing between Arthur and them save myself, the red-bearded leader screaming full in our faces to fight to the death. This was it, and Arthur leapt forward to meet his opponent. Redbeard came at him, charging him with a spear. There I saw Arthur jump at the man within arm's length. The Saxon's spear struck his shield, and Arthur staggered back, jumped sideways, and threw his sword against the Saxon's neck. Everyone halted and watched as Arthur pulled back and thrust his sword directly through Redbeard's throat, right through and out the other side of his neck. He put a foot against his enemy's chest to lever his sword out again, kicked the man down to the ground before mounting up behind on Gareth's horse. Together they galloped out of the fight, where Arthur found his own horse and came riding back to join me. Together, we made a final charge against the last remaining enemy, spearing and killing warriors wherever they ran. The bare-headed ones were much easier to kill, especially at the back of their heads and necks, so easy to chop against as we rode down behind them, swinging our swords. 3 of our warriors were trained at horseback archery, and I heard the heavy twang and wing of the arrows loosed beside me. Thud, 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 the arrows landed into their targets, and Arthur turned back to me, and when he looked around, controlling his horse, the shock of battle's end hit us both. A sudden and hideous silence overwhelmed us as we steadied our horses, and we could see no Saxons left alive. Up went our standard. Val, riding out to the center of the field and stabbing the Aquila into the soil as around us, we heard the moans and screams of the dying and wounded. Slowly our warriors began gathering together, horses lathered, men wet with sweat and blood, gasping to breathe, dying of thirst, finding our brothers alive. Arthur dismounted and collapsed against the flank of my horse, breathing in hot gasps, holding his sword, his hand gripping my horse's mane. He looked up at me, said, "We did it." Around us our men gathered. Still I sat on horseback holding my sword before slipping it back into its scabbard. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it, aware only of a burning thirst and the sweat in my eyes. As I looked at Arthur, he was gasping to breathe. Blood on his face, Saxon blood. He took my horse's reins and led us through the bodies till we came back to the dead Redbeard. I sat watching as Arthur reached down and took the Saxon's sword, watched as he drew the sword out of its scabbard and held it up before him. "Look at this, Fox," he said, turning the thing from side to side. "Look at it. It's the most beautiful sword I've ever seen. He must have been a king. I wonder who I killed." He looked at me, awe on his face. "Who do you think I killed? Who he is? I have to find out. Are there any Saxon survivors?" He called out to those around him. "Can't find any," someone called back, though they kept on searching, going from body to body and stripping them of their gold and silver rings and bracelets. I watched our men stripping bodies of their valuables, belts with bronze buckles, brooches, anything that we could use to trade for supplies or other necessities. The sword in Arthur's hand was magnificent, valuable, a beautiful crossguard that ended each end with square heads, carved richly, a red gem embraced deep within the square heads, like blood drops flashing in the late afternoon sun. The blade was long, pattern-welded and highly polished, flashing out of a metal scabbard richly engraved with obscure designs. Arthur gave the sword to me, and I took it, felt it brilliant and light in my hand, weighted perfectly, swishing through the air when I turned it. "What are you going to do with it?" I said. "You cannot wield it, not a Saxon sword in the hands of a British lord." "Bedwyr, look at it. It's not Saxon, it has a metal scabbard. Saxons do not have the skill to make swords like this." So I looked closer at the engravings, took in a breath. He was right. This was no crusted and rusty Saxon blade. It was British, purely British. We looked at each other, then down again at the man lying dead at our feet. "He must have stolen it from us," I said. "In a battle like this, only he took this sword from a British lord." I handed it back to Arthur, for it was not for me to hold. "Now I will claim it back for Britain," he said. "I won it. It's mine." He crouched down and unbuckled the belt and metal scabbard that went with the sword, thrust the blade back into its casing, got up and began walking his horse out of the mess of the field. We had destroyed the farmer's field, whoever he was. Val joined us, saying, We lost 8 men and 3 horses, not sure yet about the wounded, but you killed their leader. Arthur, are you listening to me?" When the name Arthur was heard amongst the townsmen, they swarmed in around him, and a chaotic victory cry broke out among them. The men were ready to drag him back into town and make him their hero, as if they themselves had nothing to do with it. Such is the nature of men to their warrior lords. So with the help of the villagers, we went to gather our wounded and carry our dead into the village, where they would be buried with honor. But now we fell spent from our horses, took them to water and turned to the people for rest. We ended up in the headman's hut, with the rest of us spread outside to sleep under the trees, our wounded being tended by the village women. And we slept the sleep of the exhausted. And the very next morn, we took our wounded on the long ride home after we had set fire to the field. There lay the dead of 120 Saxons, including their leader. We had reclaimed from him the sword of the British, as the headman called it, back forever in Arthur's hands. Northern AFFAIRS. 5 days later, we rode through the gates of Viraconium, elated as warriors always were when returning home in victory. We came home just in time for Arthur's wedding, which was due the very next day, and Ambrosius must surely have been wild at us for riding in so late. So everyone left their workshops and fields to welcome us back, all the boys in training and old warriors from the barrack. Ambrosius came hurrying with his attendants, the city magistrate and his officials, and we were surrounded and hailed as heroes. All my pain washed away as I basked in the adulation, and there was a lot of that, far more than even I expected. In a mass of chaos and people, we were herded into Ambrosius' campaign room. Here we stood to attention before him. As soon as Arthur opened his mouth and said, "It was," he was told to be quiet. The telling of the battle was given over to Valerius, who was our teller of battles, and his rendition was immediately written down by Ambrosius, lawyer Padric. Ambrosius, court bard, would then render us into battle praise, and so it would never be forgotten, as what really mattered was winning, and Arthur seemed to be winning over and over again. And as this was going on, Arthur slammed the mysterious British sword he had won down on the campaign table before the old guard, and their mouths dropped open when he unfolded it from an old horse blanket he had wrapped it in. There was silence a moment, then murmurings and gasps, and Ambrosius said, "Where did you get this? From whom?" Arthur told him, "I won it from their king. I killed him in single combat and took this sword, finding it was not Saxon, but British. It's one of ours." Another man said, "You killed a Saxon king?" He sounded doubtful. I said, "Aye, he did. I was there and witnessed him do it, through the Saxon's neck with his sword single-handed." The elders all burst out talking at once. Killed a Saxon king? This act was a massively important happening. And so whatever it was that Arthur had been to them before, he had now grown already to the status of a God-forged hero, a warrior endorsed by God himself. Then the sword went up in Ambrosius' hand, and he said, "I will keep this till we can find out where it came from, and how it came into the hand of a Saxon king. You are all dismissed. Out, out and get clean, you boys all stink of horse sweat." We broke apart and squeezed and shoved out of the door. I was disgusted that the old man had taken Arthur's sword. It was his, for he fought for it in fair battle and killed for it. Angry, I turned to Arthur, saying, "What right has he to take your sword, after all the work you do for him, and he steals from you to make himself look good?" But Arthur was not even paying attention to me. He had gone still and quiet, then broke into a huge grin. I turned. There behind me stood Medraut. The two cousins stared at each other a moment, stopped. Medraut saluted Arthur in Roman fashion and said, "I hear you have been in battle, Captain," and they fell on each other, hugging wildly, long-lost brothers reunited. When they pulled apart, I put a hand on Medrout's shoulder and he turned to me, a quick flash of anger in his green eyes. He stopped when he saw it was me, greeted me also with a tight embrace, before turning us to meet his escorts. There were 7 of them, 2 of them with the same face, Daffin and Irfan ap Clare, identical twins. Meeting the son of Uther seemed to have stunned them. They stood making their salutes in awe as Arthur asked Medrout where he was now staying. Outside the city walls in pitched tents, 2 of them you'll see beyond that wall. Come over and join us, Medrout asked him. No, I answered for him. We have to go and get scrubbed. We've only just ridden home. Medrout looked at me with a cold stare. Arthur backed me, saying, he's right, got to go and get scrubbed. Maybe later if Ambrosius doesn't grab me for something, which he will, I can tell you now. Why don't you come with us instead? The look on Medrout's face changed again. Dark to light, he followed us to the bathhouse, sending his entourage back to their tents. And it was true what Arthur said. No sooner had he scrubbed clean in the baths and freshly dressed when a warrior came from Ambrosius and dragged him away, as he was wanted to rehearse for his wedding the following morn. He left in a rush, leaving me to deal with Medrout the snake, always demanding, intense and living off his emotions, which always ran hot. He never did anything without heat and passion, and anything at all could come out of his mouth, honey or venom, it mattered not to the snake. This time, though, all he wanted was to hear about our battle. He judged me to see if I could measure up to what he wanted from me. I hope you looked out for him on the battlefield. I wouldn't like it if I knew you couldn't keep your guard up. You're a left-hander, you're a liability on the field. You turn your horse in the opposite direction to everyone else. I've seen you do that. Have you learned yet to turn right, not left? I did not bother to answer him, for I would not give him the pleasure of watching me justify myself, but there was a truth in what he said. It had taken a lot of training for me to learn to turn my horse's head to the right and not to the left, and go in the opposite step to the troop around me. Medrout went on when he knew I wasn't going to let him bait me. That's what I would do if I was in his troop, keep him safe. I wouldn't even bother to fight Saxons, just keep Arthur safe on the field. That's your duty to him. Even though all he got from me was a grunt, deep inside I understood him. He said, you know, Arthur never speaks of him. Arthur is not allowed to be mentioned. I make a point of mentioning him as often as I can. I get hammered for mentioning him. You should try keeping your mouth shut then, but if Arthur is such an outsider to Uther, it's strange he lets you come to his wedding. Why did he let you come, do you think? It would be impolite. Uther would look ill-mannered and with a grudge if he didn't. Fox, you are stupid. Medrout moved closer to me now. We were sitting on the benches by the baths. He whispered, Uther is afraid of his own son, so superstitious he thinks he got Arthur through some dark Silurian sage enchantment, yet in secret, he still wants to know everything Arthur does. And what about you? What have you been doing all this time? He looked at me as if I was a half-wit, saying, fighting Picts, and I don't want to talk about it. But now there's the Dahl Rioter, Gales, strange people, savage as starving dogs. Uther is afraid they will form alliances with the Picts. It's happened before, you know, so I need to talk to Arthur about this. He looked around as if he could find his cousin right here and now. Medrout always twisted around like a snake. Sometimes he could move slow and seductive like a snake. He could look at a man with a deep and flame-like stare, like a snake, unyielding, carrying within him the same kind of power that Arthur had, only not as strong. He stared at me. All right, I said, talk to him later when he comes back. Come over to us. I don't think Arthur would want to spend his last night as a free man in your stinking tent. We have a cell to ourselves now. I'll do that. He stood up now and moved away, though he kept on looking at me as he went. Bugger him raw, I thought, for I could see he was judging me, judging whether I was worthy of being Arthur's lieutenant or not. This was what I thought he was thinking about me now, I did not see either of them again till the following day, the day of Arthur's wedding.